Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's council meeting. I'm going to call it to order at this time and begin by reading our land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis peoples and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters. Is there any we'll next have a moment of silent reflection. If you'll just join with me for a moment. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, just a reminder that you can bring it forward if it occurs to you at any time. And announcements. Do we have some announcements today? Deputy Mayor Keaveney.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. And I just wanted to remind everyone on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce that Meaford Dragons is coming up on November the 9th, 7:30 at Meaford Hall. They're bringing back Adrian Fish, who is a Toronto comedian who had a great time last year poking shots at Mayor Ross. And this show is all about bringing 5 new or expanding businesses in front of 5 dragons in the hopes of winning some cash and in-kind prizes. Tickets are $40, and there's also an Audience Choice Award, and $5 of every ticket sale goes towards that. So the audience has a chance to express their thoughts about their favorite candidate as well. So it's interesting this year that the Dragon Slayers are all women. 5 of them. Solo Fit Gym is one. Christina Sheardown is bringing a catering business to her restaurant. Lisa Almond has a portable dog grooming business. Tracy Marsh has a House in Order, which is a downsizing operation. And Stephanie Peel with La Pooch, a new business on the main street with a high-end dog product. So it's going to be a great show. So get your tickets and come on out to Meaford Dragons. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, everyone. There's been an inquiry to myself about folks are seeing a bunch of signs around for Remembrance Day. It says, we will remember them. And these signs are for sale. You can purchase them for yourselves. And they are available at Simply Unique. It's the flower shop right across the road from the municipal office on Trowbridge Street. And they're $25. And they were produced by Dominion Command, Royal Canadian Legion. And each Legion can request these signs, and they're for sale. And the funds go back to Dominion Command and to the local branch. And Simply Unique, she's got a very kind heart. She is doing this, and there's not one penny for herself. So we've got a citizen in this community once again that's got a very big heart. Just also announcing that this Sunday at 10 o'clock is the ecumenical church service. I invite you to come to that. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. And some news about the actual Remembrance Day happening at the Cenotaph. We are fortunate we're going back to pre-COVID activities. We have got a pipe band from the Gray and Simcoe Foresters, and that's nice to have them. And we are getting a marching contingent. I was told a platoon strength from the commanding officer. And we are also back to having a vigil at the Cenotaph itself, which you folks will recognize as personnel posted at each corner with their rifles upturned and their heads bowed. And I think no small part was played by yourself on that, Mr. Mayor. I know that you engaged, and even though we sent a letter, I think quite personally your engagement might have just gave a little bit of oomph to that request. So the Legion locally appreciates your involvement in that, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I certainly impressed upon the Lieutenant Colonel that the people of Meaford love their soldiers and they love to remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice on our behalf. So that we can gather as we are today, to run our affairs as a democracy with everyone having a voice. So thank you very much. Other announcements? Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. And first of all, thanks to Councillor Bell for telling us about the ceremonies, and thanks to the Legion for their great contribution year after year after year. I just want to announce, and this is in response to a number of questions that I've been asked from a number of our residents concerning the Trowbridge Street Bridge. And maybe Victoria can help me with this a little bit too, but I've been asked a number of times, what is the weight limit on the Trowbridge Street Bridge? And in conversation with Mr. Fries, he has told me that there really is no weight limit on that bridge, that it is able to withstand any and all of today's traffic. Can you help me a bit, Victoria, please?
Yes, through Your Worship. So all of our bridges are designed to MTO design guidelines, highway traffic. And so any typical traffic, including tractor trailers or anything you typically see on our roadways, are fine for any of our bridges, including that one. It's where you get into like mining vehicles and like huge vehicles we would never see in Meaford, where sometimes the bridges need to be designed differently to take that type of traffic. But anything that you'd be seeing on any typical highway, our bridges are capable of handling, unless there's a load limit on them, and then there's reason for that.
Any other questions or announcements? And Matt, did you have anything for us today?
I don't today, no.
Okay, well, thank you. Moving on then to public participation, members of the public are encouraged to provide council with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released and will be limited to 10 minutes. If a member of the public wishes to make a deputation on items on the council agenda or to ask a public question of council, they may do so either in person at the council chambers or remotely via Zoom, on the phone or on the internet. Members of the public wishing to make a deputation or ask a public question must register in advance with legislative services by 10 in the morning on the day of the council meeting. And you can do that by contacting the deputy clerk at meaford.ca or calling 519-538-1060, extension 1100. An email with access information will be sent to those who register for remote participation. Deputations, I'll remind you, are limited to 5 minutes and public questions to 2 minutes. And the public can watch this meeting live via the Municipality of Meaford's YouTube channel at www.meaford.ca/YouTube. We have no presentations today. We do have a number of deputations, and I wonder if I could just ask our deputy clerk if I may group these on the subject matter as opposed to the order in which they registered. Thank you. I'm going to do that. And so first of all, I think we will deal with the TC Energy project, and I'm going to call Paul Young to the podium. Yes. Yeah, that's be turned on for you there.
Thank you.
Okay.
5 minutes. Okay.
2 minutes, isn't it? Oh, 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. Good.
I'll go as quickly as I can. Thanks for seeing me and listening. I want to comment on the charter that Matt and others have probably spent a lot of time working on. I've met with Matt and spoken with him at length about this charter, and I'm very impressed with his approach and the Rasky style that is being used for this thing. And I represent a group that is being formed in the community called the Impact Zone Group. We're getting together on a regular basis, And we're considering incorporating as a nonprofit organization so that we can manage funds that we collect. Based on my understanding of Matt's protocols, Matt's protocol for gathering input. If you look at the end of the document, page 7, he has a wonderful thing there. And I think I'm one of those X's in the community line here as people that will be consulted and bring concerns forward. And so we've spent a bunch of time. I've spent thousands of dollars of my own money on technical consultants. And we have some concerns about the risks and how risk is going to be managed by the project management that goes on as this project goes forward. We're not coming at this from a not in my backyard point of view. There may be some members of our impact zone group that are members of Save Georgian Bay, but that's just a coincidence. The people that are in the impact zone group, their major concern is accidents. And to go to the quote about the bridges, what kind of engineering design choices have been made? And if things go sideways, what happens to us? So we're more interested in protecting our safety and our investment, our home investment, and our way of life. So we've identified 5 areas that involve air quality, water quality, noise, and stability of the shale infrastructure at our homes and the lake. I call it the lake. I don't know what else to call it. Will be situated on. So my reason for showing up here today is I love everything I see in this charter, but I don't see enough. There's not enough implication of controls and reviews by Ainley, who I know you've hired, and as far as I know, they're competent. But I don't see this charter saying that Ainley has to do this, this, and this to address the concerns of the people in the impact zone. And I love everything about it, but I've spent 45 years as an engineer on projects of the same size as this TCE project. And I understand that the environment is changing. You don't have to look very far on the internet to find once in 100 years storms occurred 4 years in a row. You don't have to look very far to say, we never saw this coming. We didn't plan for it. Whole villages being wiped out by storms and stuff. So to go back to the discussion about the loading on the bridge, when engineers do a good job, they do a good job, and I trust them. I'm an engineer. But if they make an assumption about the stability of the shale under that lake that isn't true, or they make an assumption about weather and how cold it could get in the winter that is too conservative, I'm personally affected by the potential of disaster. So I'm interested, to sort of wind this up and summarize. I'm interested in this charter, adding some more teeth to it around Ainley's responsibility to look very closely at what kind of worst case climate, worst case geological stuff. I have a geological study of the ground under the proposed lake. I don't know how to read it, but other experts do. But I'm interested in the factors of safety that are being put into the design here. I'm not trying to stop it. I'm trying to say, it's not in my backyard. My way of phrasing it would be no screw ups in my backyard.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Smith, would you care to respond when you mind?
I think we'll just deal with it when we get to the item on the agenda, if that's
Okay.
all right with you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would like to submit to Matt or anyone else interested. That's the thing I printed out today from the news. The world's biggest standalone hydro grid in Australia has just done a huge study And they said, pump storage is over. Battery is the way the world is going. And they've canceled all their pump storage projects. So anyone wants to read it, I'll give it to Matt.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Next, I'm looking at the Cavers road file, and I'm going to call on Jessica M.K. Craig.
Hello. Excuse me, because public speaking isn't my forte normally. Thanks for your time. My name is Jessica Craig, and I'm the landowner of 121 Woodford Crescent. This is the property which Cavers Road passes through. I do support the Bruce Trail Conservancy's wishes to have their legal status of the trail clarified. And I in no way wish to cause any disruption or interference with their access across Cavers Road. I believe I have a good relationship with the Bruce Trail. The Bruce Trail already has 2 easements through my property, which link the trail with Woodford Crescent, and these can be seen on Appendix 1 of Matt's report. The easement request before council today, it doesn't make clear where on Cavers Road the easement would be. However, I do believe that it would be fair that part 1 and part 2 of the already existing easements on my property be joined to allow the Bruce Trail access. You can again see this in Appendix 1. However, I do have concerns about a substantial easement being given across all of Cavers Road. And Cavers Road, although it is not maintained by the municipality, it is maintained by my family and myself. My family plows snow on Cavers Road in the winter. I've also brought in gravel to improve the condition of Cavers Road at my own cost. I also have engaged a survey company to complete a full and complete survey of my property, and I've already paid the deposit for this work. You can see in Appendix 1 that my property touches both the north and south sides of Cavers Road. My property actually has 2 parcels. I've come here today to make it known to the council that it is my intent to put forward a request that Cavers Road be severed and hopefully sold to myself. It does act as my laneway and is the only way to get to my house. But I also do hope that the Bruce Trail can have a full and complete easement across it. I came here to make my support of the Bruce Trail clear, resolving the mapping errors surrounding Cavers Road, and would provide clarification for all parties involved. As of right now, you can see on page 3, the exact location of Cavers Road is quite unclear. Thank you again for listening. If you have any questions, I'm definitely open to those. But that's all.
Thank you, Jessica. You don't have any problem public speaking at all.
Thank you.
Any questions for Jessica? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. Jessica, like I've told you, if you're interested in buying this piece of property, put your request into Matt, talk to him, letter and whatnot, and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And next, we'll move on to the Howler's file. And first of all, I'm going to call on Stefan Olczewski and Andy Keller.
Good morning, Your Worship, Council. My name is Stephen Olszewski. Thank you for allowing us to be here. I realize this is our final submission before we go to a vote today in regards to my application. I wrote lots of pages to eat up 5 minutes about why we should support this, why it's good for the community, why it's good for Meaford as a whole, why we're bringing jobs to Meaford. And then my wife told me I was being petty and whiny and everything else. And I, and I was going to talk about case law, and I was going to talk about appeals and arguments and all that sort of stuff. And I'm sure that everybody here has read the reports Everybody here has reviewed the file. I hope you've read the email exchange regarding the chief's visit over last Friday. And other than that, I've really have only one point. Nothing has been put forward against the file that contradicts the engineer's report, the application process, or any other thing that we haven't done. The municipality staff have been great. They've been forthcoming. We've had conversations. They asked us to change this. We changed it. They asked us to, could we do something else to mitigate noise? We did that. They asked us to take down signs. We did that. They advised us of processes that we weren't aware of or that we may feel personally were unfair, but we've complied and we continue to comply. And I will continue to comply and work through the process. Never in my wildest dreams did I think this process was going to be as complicated as it has been, but here we are. Having said all of that, subject to any questions anyone has for me, I'll turn it over to Andy.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Andy Kelly. I'm a manager and operator at Howler's Dog Sports, and I'm also a son-in-law of Stephen Mora. So I've had the privilege of working with Denise and coming up with a strategy to help with the noise reduction issues that were brought up at our public meeting in May. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to kind of speak to that quickly. I know it's all in the report, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to speak to that. Since we had the public meeting back in May, the next day we took steps to help control the noise. It was the first time we had heard a complaint, so we moved yards around. We took yards down that were on the south side of the building, moved them onto the north side. We invested thousands of dollars in bark collars to make sure that at our drop off and our pickup times that the noise was low. It was, those are typically the times where the noise is most difficult to control. We changed our strategy for dropping off and picking up dogs. We meet the clients outside. We bring the dogs back in, so that way they're not seeing their owners or getting amped up outside. Same thing at pickup when they come in. Our clients wait outside, and we bring them out to them with their leash and all that stuff. Have a quick conversation, and we changed our whole approach just to kind of keep the energy of the place as quiet as possible. We rotate the dogs out in smaller groups in different areas, and we were with them all the time. Things that we did before, but we just made sure we were extra vigilant so that they weren't barking while they played or barking while they're doing training or things like that. I'd like to say that we took a very collaborative approach with, especially with Denise, who was kind enough to set up a public meeting, or rather a meeting with some of our neighbors to try and come up with strategies to work together to help, ease any kind of concerns that they might have. The meeting wasn't a huge success, unfortunately, but it was a chance for us to kind of put our cards on the table and really come up with solutions and strategies. So I'd like to thank Denise again for doing that. And the other piece is that with our new building, if we're given the okay to start with this, is it's a complete redesign to once again assist with the noise. So plastic interior, air conditioning on the inside, so there's no windows and doors open. Different things like that are just gonna, with the intent of knowing what we're using the building for, create a more conducive environment for us, for our neighbors, for those around who may be affected by noise. And it really gives us the chance to help with that issue, because we understand that noise is a big concern. I'd like to just finish by saying, this is personal for me. I used to live and work in Owen Sound, but I quit my job at Service Ontario to move in with my in-laws to help them run this business and get it going. It's been such an incredible experience. We have the most amazing clients. They trust us with, some of the most important things in their lives is their dogs every day, whether it's for training or, it used to be when we were boarding. all that great stuff. The feedback that we get from them and the positivity that they share, and when they tell us that they're so comfortable in knowing that their dogs are safe and well cared for in a clean environment, it just really means a lot to us. And I'd like to thank all of our clients. I know you guys got some emails and letters over the last couple of weeks from our clients supporting our application. So I'd like to thank them for that as well. And if anyone has any questions for me, I'm certainly open to speaking to what we've done and how we've kind of come to this process now since May, and or if any suggestions of what we can do later on, I'm open for it for sure.
Are there any questions for Mr. Keller? Seeing none, I will move on to our next speaker is Janet Carvalho.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me and giving me this opportunity. I reside on concession 10, and my concerns about the Howler's kennel that we're speaking about are related to traffic. The increase of traffic that we'll see on our road. We've lived there for 3 years, and we bought the house because we wanted to be able to walk on the road and be in nature and have our grandchildren visit and play on the road. And as there's not too many homes on the road, most people know that at any time of the day there would be walkers on that road. And so they're not speeding. That brings me to my other point about the increase in traffic is, I know this is a generalization and maybe I'm assuming too much, but as having been a dog owner myself, I know you're using a kennel because you're not going to be able to take care of your dog because that would be your first choice. And all the things you need to do to lead up to doing what it is you have to do to use the kennel, you're speeding to do them. So that's one of my concerns too, the speeding to meet deadlines, to drop the dog off, not knowing that it's, and then like I described, a road where there's lots of walkers and the traffic is usually slow. And the other end of this, that is picking up the dogs. You're in a rush to pick up your dog because you miss your dog and you want to get home and unpack and whatever. So my concerns with it are traffic, increase in traffic, and speed of traffic. And like I said, we bought the house thinking that, this is how we would be able to have our exercise, and that would be our lifestyle choice. And it wasn't, or it isn't. So we have concerns for that. Okay.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
The next two speakers are going to join us virtually, Jackie and Jeff Westcott. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Are you there? Good.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
So this is Jackie Westcott. I'd like to thank you, Mayor Ross Kentner and the councillors for listening to what I have to say. I apologize I'm unable to be there in person today. I really would have liked to. With only 2 business days notice that I received of this meeting, I was unable to rearrange my schedule and attend in person. I want to summarize and explain the reason for the bylaws, zoning, and Meaford official plans. First, I want to start with the meaning of a bylaw. Bylaws are helpful in preventing or resolving conflicts and disagreements. They're to prevent problems through consistent process and agreed upon procedures. And the duty is to protect residents, requires that bylaws will be enforced. We have 4 main issues that we are concerned with today. Exception of 100-meter bylaw and reduced to 3 meters. Exception of a 25% business use of home, building a boarding kennel on environmentally protected land, allow building outside of the prescribed building envelope. All of these requests for amendment are in order for Howler's Dog Sports to expand and or to comply with their business. We understand there is a time and place for exceptions, but at the time, but that time and place is not under these conditions. I can see if it is just a small exception, such as moving 100 meters to 80 meters, for example, but not 100 meters to 3 meters, rendering the bylaw useless. Each of the applicants' asks are big asks. They're not small exceptions. Example, 100 meters down to 3 meters, 25% of a business use of home to 124%, which includes a proposed addition to get down to the 124%. Perhaps an exception is reasonable when it won't negatively affect the neighborhood and environment. The neighborhood has spoken. There's been clear and consistent evidence already of negative effects on the neighborhood. An impact study would be needed to show environment impact, as the noise is definitely affecting the humans. What does it do to deer migration and mating, as well as the birds? This is according to previous discussions with the Conservation Authority. A big portion of this 80 acres is environmentally protected land and B4 buffer land. Environmental protection refers to the practice of protecting the natural environment by individuals, organizations, and governments. Its objectives are to conserve natural resources and the existing natural environment, and where possible, to repair damage and reverse trends. This exception to the 100-meter bylaw would render a 20% parcel, 3.5 acres, useless in one of our properties. The approval of the home addition is in order to house their family that are invested according to planning in Howler's Dog Sports, as well as to expand the 25% home business rule to total square foot of a home. An exception should also be considered if the applicants acted in good faith and first came to the municipality and close neighbors to consider objections and ensure they address any concerns before moving forward. In this case, the applicants only placed their application with the municipality when they were caught by the Meaford licensing department during a yearly license renewal that they were operating at a way bigger operation than what they are licensed for. They only had personal use show license at the time. They were in non-compliance on many items, so in order to continue their business, they then applied to Meaford Township. The applicants have played naive in each circumstance. They were not licensed to breed, but did for years. They were not licensed to board dogs, but they were doing this. They didn't know home business cannot exceed 25% of the gross footage of a home. With the calculations provided, they are operating at 124%. In all of these cases, the applicants say they were not aware, they were not being compliant. Since the May 8th council meeting, the applicants have either not done anything to address the dog barking, or any efforts have been unsuccessful. It wasn't until the neighborhood signed a petition when city staff finally required them to move all dogs into their home. And up to 2 days ago, I have a video. I was sitting in my home writing this, and I heard dogs barking. I went out and I have a video of them barking over at Howler's Dog Sports. I live 150 to 160 meters away from their place. The city staff have been educating them since at least January 2023. These have been our experiences when they had little to no licensing and were in non-compliance. Going forward, if council approves any of these amendments, you can understand we have no hope in believing that our and our neighbors' concerns will be addressed. Any one of the amendments leads to allowing the current operations to either continue or expand. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for her? Is Jeff ready to go?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
I'm going to try not to duplicate everything that was just stated. I'll just say the applicant's property has some of the most stringent and land use restrictions in Grey County, including environment protections, wetland, and a very small building envelope, which is the closest to our residents. the Meaford staff have been trying to bring the application into compliance and are recommending it be approved. Meaford staff have even stated they're not even sure why there is a 100-meter setback bylaw, which I find rather confusing. We've taken numerous videos of the dogs barking, customers dropping off and picking up dogs, and we are 150 meters away. A petition to oppose the commercial kennel for various reasons was signed by 25 out of 26 neighbors that were approached. All of this has been going on without the proper permits and zoning amendments. And we're supposed to believe that when the house addition, the outbuildings, kennel facilities, boarding permit, daycare permit, breeding permit are approved, that magically all this will be well, and there will not be undue negative impact on the neighbors. This is not the appropriate location for a commercial dog kennel, nor has the process been the appropriate way to go about it. We're very skeptical that the issues raised can or will be mitigated, and very skeptical that there is the adequate authority and willingness to do anything about it. When this is all said and done, the facilities will still be less than 20 meters from our property line. And it is my understanding that the matter before council today is all to help move the commercial kennel permit forward, to which, for obvious reasons, I am vehemently opposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Westcott. Any questions for him? Okay. That completes the public portion of our meeting today. There are no public questions. I'm going to move on now to council inquiries. Council inquiries, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And with your indulgence, I do have 3 questions for staff today, if I may. The first is involving the Skydev property. We've heard from a number of residents, and I think that was partly where Councillor Greenfield was going, that there's activity down there starting before the 7 a.m. mark, and I realize that's a bylaw issue, but just wanted to mention it. But I just wondered if staff could give us an update on what's really happening down there on that property with the equipment and earth moving that we're seeing.
Absolutely. I will start and then my colleagues will leap in if needs be. What we understand is happening there is the removal of contaminated soil on that site. That is not something the property owners need a permit from us for, or even to notify us of particularly. On your own property, you can do that work, and that's what we understand to be happening. We have received at least one complaint about the truck traffic in the morning, and I know that our municipal enforcement team have been dealing with that and have actually heard from the complainant this morning that the trucks did not start as early today. So we hope that means that our conversations with the developer and their contractors are working. There is no movement forward yet on anything else related to that site, but as I say, they're allowed to do their clearances.
Did you wish to speak, Denise?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just wanted to also note that just because we don't have a great communication strategy yet in place for development, and we're working on that. But on the development page on our website, I did update it to just let anybody who is subscribed know what's happening on the site. So if any of those folks who had been interested in the zoning amendment had subscribed to that page, they would have got a notification about the site cleanup activities. That's one of the ways that we're trying to improve our communications back to the public. And it's our plan that we continue to keep those development pages live and up to date until the projects are completely closed. Although we pass the planning stage sometimes, but they still may have construction activities, and we're hoping to keep that loop open there so that folks will still get updates.
Thank you. You have some more questions?
Thank you so much, Your Worship. Yes. My second one, council was expecting to see the cemetery master plan in October, and I just wondered if we could have an update on that.
My fault that I haven't got around to finishing reading it yet. So it'll come as soon as we can. A couple of other things about to take priority since, but it is on its way.
Thank you. And my last question, Your Worship. I wonder if staff could share with council any next steps and updates on bridges 21 and 22.
Through your worship, I would be happy to. So I think I mentioned that we were meeting with some proprietary bridge builders and some design build companies, and we've learned a lot. Bridge design build isn't quite what it sounds like, and we're trying to figure out what it could look like. There are a number of proprietary bridge types that we'll look into for the two bridges, but we're just trying to figure out what that process would look like from our perspective. The other thing we are currently looking at is meeting with some of the residents that live on the road and in the area to figure out their needs before we proceed too far, either with the single lane or whatever options are necessary. So we're hopefully to do that within the next month, but we're just putting a letter together and then going to be putting the process together for that.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, we'll move on to, sorry. Oh, by all means.
Sorry, just to follow up on the last query by the deputy mayor, and thank you, Victoria, for that information. Is there any expectation that the investigation of various bridges could mean that there would be something on our 2024 budget concerning construction?
Through your worship, I have had discussions with Matt about how we bring this forward, because we kind of are still in the learning stages and we don't want to bring something forward that isn't correctly shown. This will either come through the budget process or probably very similar timing, but as a separate report that will identify how the budget will be impacted. The only reason why it may not show up on the budget is that there are because it is such a significant process, there are dates that need to be met fairly early on when we may still be working on what the whole process needs to look like. But I do see that we'll have final numbers around the same time that the budget process will be wrapping up. So you will be seeing them at the same time if they do come separately. It's just on our end, one needs to happen a lot earlier than the other. And so we're hoping to get it into the budget, but if not, you will be seeing it around the same time.
Thank you.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. Not to beat a dead horse, but on the same subject as the bridges. Have we talked to the company that Chatsworth is using for one of their bridges? I don't know the company's name, but I've been out to see the bridge and whatnot. Is that company part of your arsenal of bridges?
Through your worship, yes, we did speak with them, and we spoke with some of the other ones that many of you have probably spoken to at different conferences. They're typical. We spoke with bridge companies that typically do their own proprietary design, but that was one because we did know that that was one that council was interested in looking at. Not just them, but with all of them, like there's many questions that come up in my head. And so that's why we're trying to work through what it would look like for us and to make sure that we meet our needs. And so we also want to get that information from the residents so then we can proceed properly with what we need and then understand what each of these companies could provide us and what we actually need there, because it really depends. At the end of the day on what the residents' needs are in the area. We don't want to construct something that won't meet the vehicle needs of the road. But we did speak with them. It was interesting hearing what different companies are doing. And so we will put that all together to figure out what the best step is for us in this location. And I think we have a lot of opportunity in this project to learn about this process and using some of these companies that maybe we haven't before. So it's a good opportunity, maybe even that we can use in other locations.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. And one last question, if I may. Are we still working on ownership of the bridges, or has that been put to bed?
Matt might have a better response to this, but I know that has gone back and forth many times. But our understanding as a municipality that there is no nothing further to review with regards to ownership. They are on a boundary road, and it is shared ownership between us and Chatsworth.
Okay. Okay, moving on to motions and bylaws for decision, and dealing first with our consent agenda. They're just one item, so that simplifies things. So I'll just need a mover and seconder, and the recommendation is that Council of the Municipality of Meaford, 1, direct staff to move forward with a survey of Cavers Road, and 2, once the survey is complete, bring forward a bylaw to authorize the execution of an easement agreement with the Bruce Trail Conservatory related to Cavers Road for Council's consideration. It's moved by Councillor Forder, seconded by Councillor Bell. Discussion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And just hearing from Jessica Craig, and she's not with us. Anyway, I appreciate her comments and the suggestion of potentially purchasing. And I know Councillor Bartley spoke to that. And I just wonder where that might fit into what we're approving here, if that would have any impact. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. No, I don't believe so. I think what you're approving today is the principle of going out really and getting the full survey so that we can come back and have a much better idea of exactly where the road is, and to Miss Craig's point about, exactly what would the easement look like, whether it would be the whole width of that road or a portion of the road and whereabouts it would be, because it's pretty hard for us to determine what that should look like until we know where the road itself is. With regard to the potential purchase of that property, it's definitely my recommendation that we proceed with the easement prior to considering whether or not we should sell that piece of municipal property, because then if council were to decide to sell that property in the future, and that might be fairly quickly after we go through this process, then you would know that the easement was already guaranteed to be in place, guaranteeing that trail access. Whereas if we did it the other way around, we could sell the land with the intent it would be for trail access, but then it might not have to be. So I think better that we deal with this one step at a time rather than trying to merge everything together.
Any other questions? You ready for the vote? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Items for consideration. Our first recommendation is that bylaw 2023-62, being a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw number 60-2009 of the municipality of Meaford, pertaining to lands known as 106 Georgian Beach Road South in the geographic township of St. Vincent, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Urick. Discussion? You ready to vote? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Next item, the recommendation is, be it resolved that bylaw 2023-63, being a bylaw to adopt official plan amendment number 35 to the municipality of Meaford official plan, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. This is, I need a mover and seconder, I guess, here. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Greenfield. This is the official plan amendment in connection with Howler's, I believe. So any questions or discussion? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just want to start by saying how much I appreciate the efforts of all of the neighbors, of everyone involved, and all of the clients of Howler's and staff. A lot of work has gone into this, and I'm grateful for that. My question, though, is we've heard from many residents with a concern surrounding increased traffic and the speed of traffic of people attending Howler's. And I'm wondering from staff's perspective, is there anything that can be done to mitigate this? Can we address signage in the area of this business to try to slow people down, to make it a safer environment for the neighbors?
Go ahead, Denise.
Thank you, Your Worship. So through you, initially, so definitely traffic did come up as a concern of a couple of the letters and some of the residents, and beyond that in terms of in person as well. There were recent letters talking still about traffic. At this point, because of the type of road that it is, it certainly appears to be the type of road that could handle the type of traffic that Howler's might generate, which sounds like it would be somewhere of maybe 10 to 20 additional trips two ways. So drop-offs and pickups. It's not a huge volume. Because of that, like most of these rural roads are sized and maintained to the level that would be able to accommodate those additional cars coming and going. It's not the same as sort of like a provincial highway, accepting lots of haul. It's not a major haul route. In terms of what could we do to mitigate any concerns about traffic, I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer, but when we did our circulation and our internal review, it was not triggered as it's something that needed any particular mitigation because of the volume that we're talking about being fairly low. It would be mainly folks that were coming with a limit of 20 dogs, including dogs that are being boarded there for some time. So they may be there for a week or a weekend or something like that. It doesn't seem to me that there would be a huge amount of traffic because we're probably not talking hundreds of cars a day or per hour. So because of that, I don't think any mitigation had been proposed internally based on our internal review with our roads department or anybody else. If anybody else is better able to speak to that, I'm probably not the best one to talk about whether or not we should be putting a sign up or anything like that. But I'll leave it there. Looking for other people to jump in, start saying something.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. The road comes to a T at the end, so the road isn't used a lot. I don't think we're talking volume. They did mention volume, but it's the speed of what is happening is the concern, is the speed on that road.
I'm going to ask just for a moment, Rob, perhaps Matt, can you just clarify, the proponent wants to speak, but I don't believe he's entitled at this point in time to participate. This is council's discussion. So over to you, Mr. Voigt.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a note again, and this is where it is a little bit sensitive when we have these kinds of applications. Of course, we want to consider the impact on the transportation, the network. Primarily, that's about traffic volumes and that. When we're dealing with speed, that's really up to the drivers, and that is potentially an enforcement issue. It's essentially would be impossible to draw a rational nexus between the speed that people are driving and any business they're attending, right? You can't make that connection. And so that would be something that we shouldn't really be considering when looking at this kind of application. If it was about volume of traffic, then perhaps there's something there. If the level of service at an intersection perhaps is impacted or something like that. But the fact that people may, I'm saying that may because we don't have evidence either way, we can't make that connection that people that are going here are inclined to speed any more than they're speeding anywhere else. And it's not something that we should be basing a land use decision
on. Questions, other discussion? Councillor Greenfield, you're next.
Thanks, Your Worship. And yes, I want to thank all the staff members, planning staff, building department staff, fire department staff. You have put a great many hours into this situation, and I appreciate your efforts. It's an unfortunate situation. We have many of the neighbors opposed to this project, this expanded project, and we have many of the clients who are very much in favor of it. So obviously differences of opinion. As far as the speeding and the traffic, the last time I was out on concession 10 on the gravel part, frankly, I couldn't understand why anyone would speed on that road. And that's no disrespect to our roads crew, because I know you can't have a grader on a road every day. But as I said before, I commend the planning department. I think what they have proposed for us is I don't think it leaves us any choice. We need to accept this. We have to accept and make the OP and zoning bylaw adjustments and and go forward. And so I will be voting in favor of the agenda item. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I can definitely get the sense around the council table that there's two trains of thought, not unlike what we have been listening to from the proponent and for those who speak against. It's one of those situations where it's tough. I have a question though on page 27 of our report, and it's on comments from the County of Grey. And County of Grey says the on-farm diversified of up to 1,400 square meters of building area. So 1,400 square meters, and those of you with a cell phone and a calculator, you can check my math. That would be 25 by 56 is 1,400. Ultimately, they're looking for 50 meters by 110. Oh, I don't understand that. And I don't understand how many variances that are required here. I'm inclined to think that there's an ask of far too many variances from our official plan. We had an extensive engagement putting together our new official plan. And anyway, the setback of the 100 meters, I noted that on page 26, that unless an ecological function is done, they wouldn't be able to maybe encroach towards the environmentally sensitive area. Well, Mr. Urick and I sit on the Grey Sawville Conservation, and we have seen many times when folks who are close to these areas, that staff is most definitely engaged. And I think that that should be investigated. As to my knowledge, we have heard nothing on this application. And I think that that ecological function, which is noted on our page 26, I think that's more than a valuable and good option for the proponent to look into. So today, with so many requests of variance and amendments and changes, one of the guest speakers said about if it was one or two or something light or marginal. We've had conversations at this council with developers and so on, wanting in particular another story and height or something, and we listen to that. But this one has got quite a few asks, and today at this point, with so many, and I read the report fully, and I read staff's recommendation, and to my mind right now, the expansion of this, the way it's laid out, and with that minimal distance, I can't see my way, and I will not be voting in favor of this.
I think Denise McCall would like to speak to this.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I just wanted to clarify a little bit. So I think if I understand correctly, so I had to download the package as the agenda package, so I get the numbering that I think council's looking at. So on page 26 of the whole agenda package, my report, I think it's page 7 of the report, which is 17 pages. It gets into the County of Grey analysis, and the County of Grey comments about the 1,400 square meters. That's for the building, just for the actual on-farm diversified use, not the building envelope as shown in the zoning amendment. So there's two different things that we're looking at. So the on-farm diversified use that they're looking at, I believe, is 449 square meters. So it's quite a bit smaller than the maximum for the buildings itself that they're asking to have. So just to clarify that, but the building envelope that this property has on it was a completely separate matter that was applied way back when the lands were severed. And that is because of the significant natural heritage features at the back of the property or around the site, their building envelope. So the building envelope is it's currently 40 by 100 meters. And that was the area that's generally, if you look on an aerial photo, it is cleared and is an area that they are currently using. They've asked to extend that building envelope by 10 meters each way to allow their house to expand a little bit, and to allow the expansion, to allow the building for the kennel to fit in within a building envelope. It is quite unusual to have such a restrictive building envelope on a parcel in our municipality, especially given the size of the property. But that was the thinking at the time in 2013 when the lands were severed. And it was to protect the significant woodlands and the provincially significant wetland that's kind of behind the property. So this application is seeking two things. One, the kennel use and the kind of doggy daycare size and all of that stuff, which is a little bit bigger than what is normally permitted as a home business. And it's asking for relief from the official plan policy of the 100-meter setback for the kennel. The building envelope is a separate piece to enable those buildings to expand. But the entire building envelope that we're talking about, the 55 or the 50 meters by 110 meters that they're seeking, is not where they wouldn't be using that entire area. They're mainly using the back of that building envelope right now, which is where the house is set back, and that includes the driveway. So when we did our review, and Stephen was good enough to send me some photos about after we did our site visit last January, I think, more recent photo to show me the general area that the kennel is expected to go, or where they would like it to go. It's all within the building cluster that they have now, a cleared area. So they're not going into the natural heritage features at all. And I think that is the number one reason why this relief from the official plan is being sought. So they could come and try to seek a kennel 100 meters setback from the neighboring property line. However, they would be inside the significant woodlands, and it wouldn't be to any benefit, because not only would they have to do an environmental impact study, they'd have to bring servicing out to there. They'd have to have their electricity run out to that back building. So they'd have to do the study to make sure it's fine. But then it also, is much further away from their building cluster to be able to get out there and do maintenance and do all this stuff that they have to do. It's not a great spot to do it, to have to end up clearing significant woodlands to do that. It's also up on the hill a little bit more. So even though it's further away, there was no evidence from what we could see that it would be quieter for anybody else. It's actually probably likely to carry sound further, because it would actually be the sound could carry over top of the existing training facility, and maybe go further around even than that, because of the way that the topography is on the site. So that setback would actually take you further up the hill instead of being kind of nestled in among the existing buildings. So that was the thought process there, and why staff recommended the applicant apply for an official plan amendment rather than trying to figure out a way to meet the official plan, but just get the zoning amendment to change the building envelope. We just didn't think it was in the public interest to go into the significant woodlands, nor would it mitigate any noise issues that would possibly make it noisier. So that's where we were going with that process, and why they ended up going to the official plan amendment route instead of just sticking with the zoning amendment they originally started with.
Thank you very much, Denise. Councillor Yuri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I'll echo the sentiment that, this is a very thorough report, and it was well done. Thank you. I'm glad you touched on the noise aspect, because that's obviously one of the things that's been discussed in many of the emails we've received and in the conversations from the opponents. So my question is, both Great County and our own staff are agreeing that this is all doable, with the possibility of mitigating noise to some degree. There are things mentioned, but I'm wondering whether there have been concrete discussions with the owner about tangible mitigation methods, fences, berms, hedges, whatever that might be. Are there kind of plans in place to do something tangible to actually help offset this?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Yes, so we haven't determined the exact features that would be installed or used, but the types of things that we've been working towards, and we've been speaking with the owner about those things, were things like putting up a fence, like a board fence, for example, would limit noise, like would help to stop noise from traveling. The things like their operational changes about their pickups and drop-offs would make a difference. And we were hoping to see whether or not that had made a difference over the past few months, and people felt that that was improving things. The issues about how to construct the building itself, the location where the building is proposed is hoping to use the existing training center to help block some of the noise that would, because buildings do help stop noise in themselves. So outdoor noise carries more, but if it has something to kind of block it a little bit, like a fence, a berm, landscaping doesn't tend to do a lot. Woods don't, as you probably heard if you're ever out on a trail and you hear someone hunting nearby or a dog barking, you have no idea how far away that is. And so we really do need those physical barriers like a fence or a building or a berm. And so those are the types of things we're thinking about. And also we haven't said exactly, but they plan to put in some, sound reducing panels and things like that inside the building. How they do that, the best method for us to use an implementation to implement those types of things is through site plan. And that was our expectation, is that if this is approved and they know whether or not they can move forward, that we would put those things in the agreement so that we can have something to like an implementation tool to be able to implement a fence, require other things to take place to limit, including the materials that they use in the building.
That's helpful to know. Thank you. Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, yes, very detailed. And Denise, thank you for your comments. The interior noise is not an issue. That's very easy to mitigate. So with regards to exterior noise, so the sound pressure limit is 45 decibels, for lack of a better term here. So the test results show that the measured sound was basically right at that threshold. So through a site plan agreement and through measures of mitigation, does staff have any kind of estimation how much you'd be able to reduce that sound by? Because we could put anything up there, and if the sound is still the same as it is then all those efforts may be for naught. So how can we ensure that we can actually bring that down to a more manageable level?
So thank you for the councillor's question. Through you, Your Worship. I don't have a number in place. I mean, according to the report, they were satisfied that everything meets the thresholds. And what I'm saying is let's go a little bit beyond that. We understand that in a rural area, noise is much more important than it is in an urban area where you tend to have a lot more ambient noise like traffic and just activity. In the rural area, there's an expectation that it is quieter and noise is really felt in a different way. So because of that, we don't have a firm number, but as you've heard, the issues of noise were not known by the applicant prior to the public meeting. That's kind of where this issue got fleshed out. And so they've taken those steps to try to figure out, like was mentioned by the deputation, to limit the number of dogs outside at a time and to change their procedures. What we're still waiting on is we have had a bylaw out there through a couple of complaints since that time, and they've been, listening for noise, going there at the kind of drop off times to see what it sounds like and following up that way. And I still think that that is the best approach in terms of noise issues, that it has to be a bit more of a continuous thing in order for us to act on it. So if you just hear a couple barks, a couple times a day, that's not going to be something that bylaw can follow up on. But I think the overall that we can reduce the amount of noise that could happen or could be felt by the neighbors by doing all of these things together collectively. But I don't have a number to say, well, now it'll be 30 decibels or something like that. I think everything that has been proposed would help improve the situation, including having the building behind the training center and an ability for those runs, now that they've been, even though now and as well they've been moved, have them inside its own little enclave that will help keep the noise into their their building cluster versus having it be on the outside. When this application first came before you, the runs were actually in between, some of the runs on the property were in between the training center and the property line in that 3-meter section. So they were right up against the neighbor's property line. So that was the very first thing that we had them do, was to move that outside of that area, so that immediately they should have noticed a difference. I can't speak for them to say that they did notice a difference, but that was the hope, that every single tool that was implemented would make a difference. So following up from that, we're committed to working on as many different aspects as we can that are reasonable for the applicant, and the types of things I think that you've heard are the types of things that seem like a reasonable, they're reasonable tools that to put in through site plan control, like structures and the type of building, and also the limits on dogs outside at a time. We also have to be aware that there's personal dogs that the applicants own and other people own in the neighborhood that also could be adding to noise. And I don't know for sure whether some of the dogs that were barking were actually the personal dogs. I know my dog probably would bark more than a visitor dog coming over to my house. So there's that aspect too, that the owner will need to be cognizant of moving forward, that their own dogs need to be also under control to help make this a little bit easier on the neighborhood. And from what I've heard, I understand that that's what they're trying to do. But I unfortunately don't have a number for you to say it will be X amount of decibels once they implement everything.
I'd like to hear if there are other questions or comments. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Real fast. I want to catch the eye of the guest speakers who presented. I haven't heard any of my other fellow councillors say that they were actually out there. I was. And I had a physical look, pulled into the driveway, and the neighbors pulled into the driveway. I even know the swamp and the bush that was up to the 6th side road. So I personally was out there and I did have a look. And I hope that other members of council took that opportunity, because this is an important decision for you folks.
Before we vote, I would like to be clear, and I'm going to ask you, Denise, or our Director of Development Services, what kind of precedents are we setting? Like, I don't want to vote on something for the official plan and then come back and vote a bylaw, because once you've done it in one place, you've done it in both, I think. And I'm just curious, are there any really serious precedents being set here? Go ahead, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start and then Denise can get into the details. So the way planning works, because you're dealing with a lot of site-specific variables, that's everything to do with the physicality of the site. Denise has gone through the details and even some of the questions from council about environmental lands, et cetera, on the grounds, the existing uses, the neighboring uses, the characteristics of the streets. I can go on and on and on. Because of that, planning doesn't really work on the same way as precedents, right? We look at each site independent of what's being asked there. And there's sometimes similarities, but that's not how planning is set up. And that's also not how planning law is essentially managed. You can't point to something else and say, we've got the same thing, therefore you have to allow it or not allow it. It comes down to the characteristics of the site. Of course, there are sometimes similarities, and you can reflect upon that and see what have we done in the past, and have some of the negative impacts been borne to be correct, or were there assumptions that didn't play out? We often hear that about traffic, right? That the whole world's going to end because all the traffic's going to be there, and usually that doesn't happen. So precedent is not really a thing in land use management and planning, but we can reflect on our past decisions to inform us.
I just find that hard to comprehend, because if there's a 100 meters established, for all cases, and we're going to provide an amendment that brings it down to 3 meters from 100, I can't understand how that wouldn't open the door for many other similar applications.
Through your worship, again, it's because it depends on the characteristics of the use. I believe even one of the speakers came today and said the way they're much of the use is inside, and that again, it comes down to the characteristic of what's there. It is a little odd, perhaps on the way we might in commonplace think of things. It's somewhat similar with a committee of adjustment on what is a minor variance. It's not a mathematical calculation, it's the magnitude of the impact, right? And that's where we see that kind of thing as well. Sometimes 1 meter matters more than 20 meters because of the impact that that's there.
Thank you very much. Are you ready to vote on this? Nope, Councillor Greenfield.
If I may ask one more question,
Sure.
through you, I think to Mr. Smith, these mitigation measurements, the insulation, the buffering, can council put timelines as to when they have to be in place? I mean, it would have to be a reasonable amount of time, but we don't want someone coming back in 3 or 4 years and saying that, hey, look, the tree buffer is not there. Is that possible?
I'm actually going to deflect that one back to my planning colleagues, because I think that's about whether we can do that via the Planning Act rather than through sort of municipal bylaw, but I'm not sure.
So to the councillor's question, through your worship, the site plan control bylaw already would do that, meaning that you have to get the site. So the site plan control bylaw would say, you have to do an agreement for these sorts of things. It's in the bylaw that we're proposing today as well for the zoning bylaw. So the approval is conditional on that, being that one of the things required is the site plan agreement, and the site plan agreement would have to be executed saying that, you're doing those things and they're in there prior to being able to actually start using the site. So it was our understanding that if this was approved, it would give us the opportunity to start putting that agreement together. And since the applicant is planning to build this fairly soon, they would be putting those things into the agreement and then as part of their building permit. So they wouldn't be able to just start going ahead and using it, and then a couple of years later we say, hey, they never put the fence up, because we would be making sure that stuff got done as part of the overall site plan control portion.
Are you ready for the question? All in favor? I believe that's carried. Do you want a recorded vote? Oh, okay. Item C is the zoning bylaw amendment. The recommendation is be it resolved that bylaw 2023-64 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 60-2009 of the municipality of Meaford regarding lands known as 397-531 10th concession be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. I need a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Forder, seconded by Deputy Mayor Keaveney. Discussion on this resolution. You ready to vote? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Now we need a motion to move into committee of the whole. Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Bartley. And the first item is the council priorities update. The recommendation being that committee of the whole recommend council of the municipality of Meaford adopt the 2022 to 2026 council priorities. B is to the TC project update.
Just the first one, right?
So just the first one, I beg your pardon. Okay. So discussion on this.
And first, please.
Okay, mover and seconder. So I thought I was there. Okay, but Councillor Forder and Councillor Uhrig. So this is the entire package of 15 project charters.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the original report that I think council saw in early September or late August. And at that time, council passed a motion to defer it until such time as a TC Energy draft charter could be added. So this report basically just adds that draft charter for TCE. So if you are ready to move all of these forward by passing this motion today, then by the time we get to the November the 13th meeting, which will be then before council, we will have a website for the council priorities. We'll have a draft booklet and so on. And so, you know, then it will be final adoption of the whole thing as a whole. As I've got the mic, I will just say that this TCE, or rather, I'm trying to refer to it as an Ontario Pump Storage Project Charter when I remember. This charter is very much designed to be an outline, because I think things are changing with this project on a regular basis, and we are learning more. And obviously, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. And so this, as all of the project charters are, I think will be a living document and updated as we go through all of these projects, both in terms of some of the goals, but also primarily around sort of some of the engagement and some of the timeline on them.
Anyone wish to add something here? Councillor Bell?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we're talking about council priorities.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Well, I was hoping maybe the deputy mayor would maybe make some comment on this, holding the position of being deputy mayor. But we definitely, I hope that the general public gets to see the thought process of this sitting council. Just to name two or three, we had a guest speaker today talk about noise, wind, stuff, environmental issues. And we have got as one of our priorities the environment. It's sound and things like that's important to us. And another one, just to say it, the short-term accommodation policy. We spend a lot of time, and there's more time to spend on that. But that is that's a key element of this policy. And a huge one. And there's two or three that are knit together. The downtown of the town of Meaford itself. Some guidelines for what it looks like, what the streetscape can look like, how friendly it is to human beings when we look at what's being created or in existence. And a big one is the development of the market square. I think we all around council are saying this is a key element spot in the town of Meaford. And I've only touched on two or three, and others are welcome to pick up. But we have got a lot of things that we are setting out for our priorities. And I think overall, there was another major thought process on this council. We wanted to have some priorities that were attainable during our term. And we didn't want to design some things that were big sky, big dream things that we'd never see results on. We wanted to see things during our term that we could see them. They're in action. They're being worked on. And I think that with the number that we've got, and there were timelines in our package that we've worked on, I think overall we have more than a good shot at attaining what we say are our priorities. So thanks, Mr. Mayor, for that. Yes.
I just might add that we did, we have not abandoned the pillars on which these priorities rest. But the thing is, each one of these priorities will move the needle on each of the pillars, like sustainability, like economic development, health and well-being, and so on. So, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and I appreciate your comments and those of Councillor Bell. And I just want to add, from my perspective, how proud I am of the end result of this exercise. I think our strategic priorities documents are aggressive and progressive, and I think they're brave. I think we put a different and a detailed approach towards how we've accomplished these priorities this term with the process of creating the charters, and I thank Director Voigt for that. It is impressive that we've already, as Councillor Bell noted, I believe there's 6 charters that are already underway, and I think that's incredible as we draw closer to the end of our first year of this term. That shows that we really mean business here. I think we're in the midst of a really collaborative approach, and that is so important to all of us. I'm really grateful for the way that council and staff are working together on the creation of these charters and our priorities, with all of us in agreement, and we're all behind this document very, very much. And I think that will go a long way towards seeing these items through. And I really just only had one question, just to allow staff a little bit of opportunity to provide more clarity. On page 4 of 7, it talks about regular reporting to council. And I'm just wondering if we could, as I say, have a little more understanding of how we think that'll work. I know it'll be perhaps different and changeable as time goes by, and as different things happen that require more discussion with council, but I just wanted to get some feedback on staff's approach to regular reporting to council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take that in 2 different ways. Firstly, on the council priorities as a whole, our intent is that there will be a report to council in January and July of every year, including January 2024 in a couple of months' time, to give an update on where all of council's priorities are at in one time. Obviously, council will see information about many of these at other times as well. It's likely to be an update report about short-term accommodation, for instance, before the end of the year, and something about the tree inventory and so on as well. But we'll collate that all together at least twice a year so that both council and the public can see how these things are progressing. The reference the Deputy Mayor makes to page 4, I think, was to the Ontario Pump Storage Charter. What I've already committed to with council, and you see the first of these on the agenda next, is that at least once a quarter I will bring a report forward to council to say what's happening with the Ontario Pump Storage project, or rather the municipal work related to that. That will be even if the answer is not much is happening, but I suspect that won't happen very often. In the proposal that we'll talk about at the next item, it does talk about the external project manager bringing an update every month, and I'm not quite sure exactly what format that would take yet, but I think we'll basically just plenty of ways to keep council and the public updated on what we're doing, particularly in relation to things like the community steering committee that we're talking about as well.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. This is something that we could have went out with a consulting firm and paid many thousands of dollars for. Our staff led this. All senior staff were there. We had about 75 items to start with. We narrowed it down to these 16. And I'm quite happy with the way the staff led this and what they come up with. And I want to put a big thank you out to the staff, 4 of them sitting here, 5, but they were all part of it, and it worked out tremendous. And we have something, like Councillor Bell said, that is achievable. It isn't 75 items and we're only going to get that some of them. These are 16 that are our highest priorities. They're achievable. And to staff, thank you. I thought it was a great deliberation and exercise.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. If you're writing the check, it's MATT.
Councillor Bell, I think you're next.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can see that budget's being talked about here. Mr. Mayor, I didn't mark down to make this comment with a date and time, but I think a big element of our council priorities, there's an upcoming meeting.
Yes.
In November. If you'd like to speak on that, Mr. Mayor.
November 29th. I believe it's what time?
I think we have 5 to 7 in the
5
calendar.
to 7. Yes, exactly. I remember. So yeah, you know, you talked at the election meetings about a report card from council within a year, and I did as well. And you know, we didn't quite make it within the year, But I think what we're bringing to the table for the public on November 29th is far more valuable than anything that we might have crafted in less time, really. And I just am very proud of the things we're doing. Actually, one of these is actually complete. It's in the bag, and it is a thorough enumeration and evaluation of the tree canopy in urban Meaford. We now know how many trees we have, and where they are and what they're doing and how valuable they are. So that one is already done. But so I would really encourage people to come out on the evening of the 29th. It will be at Meaford Hall, I believe, in the galleries, and quite informal. I hope that each member of council will have a few moments to speak, and you can be thinking about that. And yeah, we want to hear your questions and get your feedback on these priorities. Maybe some of them you think are great, maybe some of them you don't get it, so we can have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can just add to that, just so for those watching, because I know things like public meetings are a bit scary to some, this very much isn't designed to be a public meeting. There will be some, as the Mayor says, some kind of presentation to start with, but then an opportunity for people to talk individually with members of council and members of senior staff and answer questions and things, rather than having to do, ask your question in front of 50 people or anything. It'll be a chance for a conversation.
Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, just a simple observation with regards to the Ontario Pump Storage Project Charters. The bottom of each page says climate change and mitigation resiliency. So I assume that's going to be adjusted.
Absolutely. Sorry about that.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that the discussion B on the TC project update was going to be a separate discussion.
It is, but the project charter kind of had to come before because of the deferral.
Okay.
So yes, as long as you're okay with the priorities as a whole, we'll vote on them, and then we'll talk about TC as a whole.
So are you ready to vote on that? If so, all in favor? And I think we are unanimous in that for sure. Now we'll consider the TC Energy project update dated fall 2023. And then we have one more thing to deal with in this section, but let's now have that discussion. And who would like to go first? Oh, mover and seconder, absolutely, sorry. So you just moved it, and Councillor Uhrig seconded it. Discussion. Yeah, go ahead there, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and you may wish to come back to me because I do have 4 questions, but I'll start this off. And the first section deals with Strategy Corp, which is great, but I'm curious to know when we might meet Strategy Corp, and do we expect representatives from this company to be on the ground in Meaford? Is this going to be more of a virtual relationship? When are we going to see these representatives in front of council?
I think different, some and some, in answer to your virtual or in-person thing. I think it very much depends on how we build that relationship and how they build what it is they want to do. I think a lot of the time the conversations with us will be virtual because obviously it's more expensive to have people here all the time. I think that it is likely the members of council will sort of meet in some form or other, people from Strategy Corps in the next couple of months into the early new year, because I know one of their first things in their phase 1 was to meet with individual members of council to sort of get your perspective on community benefits and so on, and they'll do the same with senior staff as well. One of the pieces of work that is identified in this draft resolution here is to get for me to bring together this internal working group that I'm talking about, but also then to bring together Ainley Strategy Corps together so that we can actually really identify exactly some of the timelines on this stuff. I think a lot depends on the decision from the Minister of Energy we're expecting on November 30th. A lot depends on what the next steps in the IA process are, and obviously you'll probably be aware that there was a Supreme Court decision related to that relatively recently that we're just trying to understand as well. So some things will happen fairly quickly, some things might take a little bit longer, but I think council will start to see and hear from Strategy Corps relatively soon.
I see, if I may, that I'm trying to save trees, so I print on both sides, and so I missed, I think I should read the recommendations really on this because they're pretty pertinent. And so I'm going to do that right now and then pass it on. The recommendation is that Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford, 1, authorize the execution of an agreement with Ainley Group to perform an enhanced project management role for the TCE pump storage project. 2, direct staff to draft a terms of reference for a community steering committee for council's consideration. 3, direct staff to establish an internal working group consisting of the mayor, deputy mayor, interim CAO, director of engineering, and director of development services, plus a County of Grey representative and any other staff deemed necessary by the CAO to lead the municipality's work on this project. 4, direct staff to work with representatives from Ainley Group, Strategy Corps Inc., and TCE to develop a comprehensive project plan, clearly identifying roles and responsibilities. And 5, authorize the recruitment of a project administrator, pump storage, municipal staff position on a contract basis to coordinate the proposed community steering committee and support the CAO in relation to the pump storage project. So all of this is designed to make us much better prepared for what may be coming down the pike very shortly. You were next, Councillor Yurig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. There's a couple of points throughout the charter. It talks about community input, which is obviously essential, and glad that that's prominent. The question I have regarding it is one point in there talks about actually being able to visit the proposed site. Something this council hasn't even had a chance to do yet either. And I just wondered what opportunity there might be for us to do that, let alone the community, because that would seem to be a pretty important factor for us to be able to view ourselves.
I don't know yet. I think it's a simple answer. I think it's one of the things that makes sense and that we would want to do, both with council and a potential community steering committee, but not something we've made any arrangements for yet. And I think we'd have to figure out the appropriate time to do that, which I imagine will be during the environmental assessment process.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. This report, I've got written, wow. This isn't where I was going with this. I wanted to hire somebody to negotiate a better agreement for the municipality. We're now spending $3.5 million on consultants. We're going to learn and know as much as TCE or any engineer out there when we're done. There's things on here. This just isn't where I was going with this, and I'm just shocked, flabbergasted. And as far as I'm concerned, I just want to get back to number 2. I love reference for a community steering committee. Love that. Number 3, a working group. I like that. But all I was wanting to do is hire a negotiator. And here we are, $3.5 million to a consulting firm. I just can't, I can't go down that road.
So I think I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Smith to explain sort of some of the background to how he chose this route.
Absolutely. I sort of start with the big numbers because I think big numbers are always scary. All of this in both Ainley's proposal and my report are estimates. Right now, we don't know how long something's going to take. I think Ainley's proposal is based around a sort of a 14-month period of work. I suspect it's going to be probably closer to 2.5 to 3 years. We're estimating the cost of many things because until we actually get there, we don't know. I think the other part of this is that a number of things in that $3.5 million figure are things that we have already committed to paying for. So, for instance, there is an estimated cost of $131,000 there for studies and reports. No, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. There is an estimated $444,000 for the technical review of studies. I mean, that's something we've already said through our original resolution in July that we wanted to contract Ainley to do. And basically what they're saying is that between whether it's an internal or an external expert to be able to do that for them and for them to then provide that information back to us as a municipality and for us to have comments on it, it's going to cost that amount of money for each of those studies, whether it be on geotechnical or hydrogeology or infrastructure and so on. There's also money in here for things like an allowance for municipal staff time. Right now, I and a number of other colleagues are spending quite a bit of time on this, and the municipality is paying for that. And so some of these things are already in here, as are the legal bills that we expect, because even if we get as far as a community benefit agreement, we will have to have a lawyer actually do a lot of the work for the physical agreement itself, because that's not what Strategy Core do. The other part of this is that all of this, if it moves forward, the expectation is that TCE or the owners of an Ontario Pump Storage Corporation, as and when that's created, would pay for this work. None of this would go forward without us having those costs recouped, because the idea is, as per TCE's previous commitment, that they will make us whole for the money that we encounter during the course of the work we're going to do on this project. I think while some of the numbers seem high, and the numbers, perhaps things like the Community Steering Committee might seem high, because we're perhaps thinking about how we operate our internal committees right now. So, when we think about a Heritage Committee meeting, we don't spend very much money on that at all. It's the staff time involved and so on. I think what Ainley have tried to do here is to really think about how to make those the most effective possible. And if we want to bring in somebody who's a hydrogeology expert to come and talk to a committee or to council about that, so that the community has a much better chance of understanding what those reports say, then that will cost us a pretty significant amount of money. Right now, TCE have agreed basically with immediate effect to start funding the enhanced project management, in addition to the strategy core and the technical review, and for the administrative position in-house that we're talking about. Any further conversations about the other items in the Ainley proposal, they will have to come next once we've got that far, because to be honest, if council doesn't want to head in this route, then there's no point us getting commitment from anybody to get that money and so on. The reason why I think all of this is important, and I've spent a lot of time on this over the last 3 months to try and really understand where we're up to, is that we as a municipality in our approach so far, and I've been very much part of this, have sort of had two different elements to it. We've had the community benefit bit, where we've been concentrating on how do we make sure the community benefits to the maximum ability should the project go ahead. And we've had the technical review bit, where we felt that we should get somebody to review the reports as part of the environmental assessment and the impact assessment and tell us whether those reports make sense or not. Both of those are real things, and both of those things are absolutely things we should do. But there's this bit in the middle that I personally feel is missing, and that's what I'm recommending that we sort of fill the gap with today. I believe that we are missing a bit where we are representing our community to the best possible extent, building our trust with the community about the TCE project, but also building trust with them about the project. Because if we do this right, and if we ask all the right questions, and if we get all the right information, then those folks, like we heard from today, who live in that area, will hopefully feel more comfortable that the project is safe and secure and won't damage the municipality. We shouldn't just be looking at community benefit, we should be looking at mitigating any negative impacts to the community of this project. Because if it goes ahead, there will be some. There'll be some positive impacts too, probably, but there will definitely be some. So we should be really actively trying to get in there and work on identifying those. And our community is the one that needs to do that for us, because they're the people that see this. And as Mr. Young said earlier, they've spent quite a lot of money, some of these folks, to try and figure some of that out. But then use us as their voice, because we are going to have a more effective voice with the federal government and the provincial government than individual members of the public are, to really get the answers that we need. And then to take that technical review and bring it back to the community, so that the community actually understands that that review's happened, that an independent person's looked at it, that we believe it, that we've asked more questions, and hopefully then feels more comfortable about the project as a whole if it goes ahead. So I think while this looks like an awful lot of money and an awful lot of work, it is a lot of work. But I think it's all stuff that's incredibly valuable to both help council and the community understand this better. There's also a few things in there that I think will help us to get benefit in a better way. There's talk in here about things like community visioning and community profiles and so on. And it's all well and good us talking about us wanting to have a community benefit agreement. But it's hard for us right now, as the people sat around this table, to say what that benefit should be. Because do we really know what the community wants compared to where we are now? This community is going to change. The answer cannot be it will stay the same. So what is it, the things that we really want to get other people to invest money into? Do we want to say our main concern is fiscal stability of the municipality, and therefore some of this investment should go into our infrastructure and our infrastructure deficit? Or do we want to say this is an opportunity for us to take a step forward that we might not have been able to before by investing in services we don't have yet? And I think doing some community profile work really helps us understand where we're going as a community, and particularly how this project will impact us and what it will look like at the end. And so pulling all of this in together, I think we can sort of use different pieces of the information to get us good outcomes, both on the impact side and on the community benefit side. I've talked a lot already, so I'll stop, because I could talk about this for hours, but I'm sure there's other questions.
Could I just add in here that you and I visited with the mayor of Teeswater and staff there, and they I believe it's not until the 2040s that work would actually begin on the deep geological repository. But in the meantime, there are people working in the municipal building there and being paid $2.6 million a year for the research they are doing and the work they are doing to prepare the community for what is going to unfold there if it happens. And I think that we're trying to position Meaford in a similar way so that actually this will be behind us faster than we think. And it's really important that we be ready and know what it is we're looking for. And so while I both the deputy mayor and I have found some overlapping, we want to see some meshing, not a bunch of, people being at loggerheads. But I think there's a really important opportunity for us to do this in a way that is going to provide Meaford, and especially the people in the impact zone, with some security and some confidence in what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you for raising that visit to South Bruce, because I think it's really important, and I think it was really valuable that the mayor and I got the opportunity to do that, and the CAO and mayor there were wonderful with us. And our project is different to theirs in that the community of South Bruce does have veto power on whether the deep geological repository can be sited there or not, as do Sorghina Ojibwe Nation. But one of the things that I think both the mayor and I took away was very much their attitude that the community needed to be involved in this every step of the way, but they also had to do it together. And I think very much this stuff is designed here to try and bring the municipality and the community together to get the best possible outcome for everybody. As I've said to a number of people on this one, both on the proponent side and on some of the groups who aren't necessarily in favour, we will never agree on all things. And sometimes I'll say some things they don't like, and sometimes they're going to say things that we don't like. But I think it's really important that we do everything that we can to work together on this, rather than just sort of letting it pass us.
Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I really like the fact that it's already done. We've got Strategy Core. It's a done deal. We've got them. And it's recommended that we're going to recommend Ainley. We want them to be involved. Mr. Smith, you mentioned there's a bunch of the middle bits which are in here. And Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that we don't want to have overlap or having folks, like you said, loggerheads.
Yeah.
So we don't have that. I think that one of the shortest paragraphs in our report is probably, in my mind, the most important aspect. And that is the recruitment of that project administrator. That project administrator, 100% of their time, 100% of their engagement, all of their communications with all the others, that project administrator is going to have probably the key position in working with the proponent on what they would like to do, and ourselves as a municipality, and the middle bits about having steering committees and having public engagement and having meetings and setting up who's on, what was the other one that got a nice name? An internal working group and so on. I believe that that administrator, all of those things that that administrator is going to be over and pulling all of that together. And I am 100% behind the hiring of that individual. And Ainley, I am going to vote in favor today for Ainley for that review. But I think that as this rolls out, on my personal view on it, is that as the proponent working on a pump storage facility, will say things and do things and engage in things to keep their corporation moving ahead, that my view on the Ainley group would be, we had a guest speaker who said things about, what was the word, the ground itself, its shale, its stability. Let's just use that. So, you know, TC Energy is going to have to look at the shale. It's going to have to look at the stability, because if it's going to do this, it's a major thing. In my mind, by having Ainley, all of the engineering, all of the studies, all of those things, I'm 100% behind wanting Ainley to take a look at that and review, just on that one comment from a guest speaker, the stability of the shale. It's just one comment. So my view on that is that I want Ainley to be engaged, but I'm not so sure when I look through all of the impact right now of all those details of Ainley. I'm just not so sure that at this point we need to be that deep with Ainley and sort of telling them how to do that. I want them to be an engineering firm that definitely looks at things and gives us a report, because we want to have balance to this entire thing. So all of these that are laid out, they're all important, but to me, getting that project manager in place is key. And definitely I'm going to raise my hand in support of all this, but I think there's an element of priorities.
Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bell and everybody for their comments. I think that the other reason that I am pretty firm in my support for this, particularly for the additional work that Ainley are planning to do, is that they have the expertise here. The person who would be our de facto project manager from Ainley, Norman Sandberg, many of you will know, has been a town councillor in Collingwood, so understands the municipal sector, has been one of our engineers through Ainley for many, many years, but has also worked for the Nuclear Waste Management Organisation. So he's spent the last 10 years on this side of the proponent for a very similar project to this, working with municipalities on whether or not they should be the host site. So this is somebody, and several members of the team listed in their fee proposal are people who've also worked in that world, who really understand where this comes from and how these processes work. We as municipal staff are very, very good at many, many things. This is not something that we know the details of. And certainly when we talk about hiring a project administrator, it is very much that, an administrator. It's, you know, I will be the point person, or the person sitting in this chair will be the point person internally to make decisions and to work with the working group. And that person will be the person to organize the community steering committee, organize the meetings, you know, make sure we're all in the right place at the right time, do some of our website updates, all that sort of stuff. We wouldn't be able to hire somebody for a municipal staff position who comes with a breadth of knowledge and experience of these sorts of multi-billion-dollar projects that we need, to be blunt. Like, we are not in the position where we have that capability to find the right person. So bringing in this sort of expertise from Ainley, not just on the engineering side, but on the project management side, where they've done things like this before, is vital to me for us to do this well. it may be that the bill doesn't end up being as much as it says it is. It may be that the bill ends up being more than it says it is, depending on how long and how complicated this goes on for. But I think it's very, very important that we have these folks involved, because they're the folks who are going to be able to talk to people in the way that makes sense, and do the work with both the IA and TCE, and really support both us as staff and you as council.
I think I'll go with the Deputy Mayor and then you, Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. First of all, I really appreciate in both documents, both proposals, the amount of discussion about public engagement. I think that's critically important, and it may seem at this point like there will be a bit of burnout with our public, because there's so much, but I know that will come together, and there will be collaboration between these two organizations, and it will be wonderful to see folks having that opportunity to participate in the discussions as we go. Listening to you, Interim CAO, Mr. Smith, and recognizing the amount of work that you have put into this project in the short time that you've been in your current position is absolutely amazing. And I feel very strongly that's what is missing here in this proposal is any financial compensation for our current staff time that is involved in this process. And granted, we will be hiring the project manager and an administrative individual, but you will still be heavily involved in the work of this pump storage project going forward. And I really would strongly suggest that we, as a council, come back to TC Energy with whatever Mr. Smith feels is appropriate in terms of a percentage of his time and staff's time, because the truth is, this is not the beginning of this project. We've had years of staff and council being involved in this without seeing compensation. So I think it's high time that was addressed, and that an appropriate percentage is included in the funding, along with that for the Ainley Group and Strategy Corp and the other staff person that will be hired to work on this. So I look forward to your thoughts on that, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I agree that there is a significant amount of time and energy going into this right now. It's a very important thing for the community. I think in my conversations with TCE over the last couple of weeks, I believe that there is scope for some capacity funding for not just a full-time administrator, but for some support as well. At this time, the confirmation we've had from them is that they wanted to limit that support very initially to the two bits that I've talked about, but with the intent that we would talk further on some of these other costs that are identified in the Ainley proposal. I think my interpretation of that is that some of that is attached to this November 30th expected decision date, because that will tell the proponent with how far and how quickly they're going to be able to move forward on the environmental assessments and so on. I know they've said to me that they'd sort of like to take this on a piece by piece basis. My very much hope and my recommendation to the municipality is that we do this initial piece of funding from them, but then we try and sort of put together as detailed as a project plan as possible and get sign off on the majority of it, with some caveats of whether certain things happen or not happen depending on how the project goes. Because I think it's very difficult for us to say, here's how we're going to do something if we don't know that the money's going to be there to do step 8 in the end, because maybe step 8's the most important one and the most expensive one, but we suddenly don't have the money at that stage. So we'll work through that, supported by Ainley as a project manager. And I think just while we're talking on that kind of thing, the other piece here that I think is really important is when we talk about these different things, I really want to separate out any idea of community benefit from the idea of capacity funding for the work that we're doing and impact mitigation. Though impact mitigation and community and staff capacity, they are funding specifically related to the project and the work that we've got to do on the project, and that's one thing. Community benefit is the literal benefit to the community that will happen on an ongoing basis afterwards. So I think there really is sort of 2 or even 3 separate pots of money there. So I just want to make sure we don't get them confused when we're talking about things.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of things. I do have a couple of questions to follow, but first of all, I want to thank Mr. Smith, for his efforts and all staff members who have been involved. I think the deputy mayor had a very good idea about some potential remuneration for works that had not TC Energy come along, our staff wouldn't have been involved in. So I see the efforts as being extras. But I do have a couple of questions. First of all, I want to say all 5 of these recommendations that are combined into the one, I find them of equal importance. Some of you may know that I have had some concerns about this project and still do, but reading this report did give me a tad of a comfort level going forward. I have had a brief conversation with one of the lead players, or a gentleman whom I expect will be a lead player on behalf of the Ainley Group. And he has given me some reassurance. And one thing he did mention was that in public involvement that he's been dealing with, he has found that members of the public must be heard and must be listened to. And I like that too. That sounds good to me. The community steering committee. Now the report says there will be terms of reference created. I'm just wondering, Mr. Smith, will council be choosing these committee members since they are a committee of council? And will we be given an example of what qualifications we should be looking for in the naming of the members? And I guess the other question is, do we have any idea what kind of numbers? Because we do know that too large of a committee can be maybe not as productive. Can you help me with some info there?
I can certainly try, yes. So yes, we'll put together a committee terms of reference, and that's something that I know some work has already been started on. My recommendation will be that we will base that around some of the ones that exist for similar projects, like the one going on in the municipality of South Bruce, and sort of take a lot of the information from that. Yes, it would be a committee of council, so council would be appointing it based on our appointments policy. But I think my intent would be that in the terms of reference, we would likely be more specific than we are for most of our committees about the breadth of people that we would like to be part of this. So, for instance, just to name a couple of groups, I think it's really important that we have a representative at least from something like Save Georgian Bay and something like the Impact Zone Group, but also things like the Chamber of Commerce, because I think, one of the things we haven't talked about at all today, but it's a big part of this, is what the economic development impact on the community is, and what the expectations of TCE and their partners will be on that front. So my intent would be that we would want to find as broad a range of people as possible with a broad range of opinions on the particular project, so that we get as much input as we can from across the board. So some of that may be sort of specified, inviting groups to offer us somebody. Some of it might be just an open application process. I can't imagine that we'd go for more than 9 to 11, because, as you say, once you get up to a certain point, it becomes very difficult. One of the reasons we've moved our committee meetings to this room is because then we can have them around this table and have the the cameras going. And again, I think for something like this, that's really important that we have as many ways as possible for our community to hear what's being said and being done. So that does limit us somewhat in numbers. So I think some stuff to play with there, but I think it would inevitably be larger than a couple of our existing committees because you would want to make sure you're getting as broad a range as possible. The other in the recommendation that we've had from Ainley, from folks who've worked with these committees in the past, is that, you know, council will be ex officio members rather than voting members on it, because as was mentioned to me, having councillors ask a committee to give them advice and then voting on what that advice should be back to council is perhaps sometimes a little strange. And I think on this one, it's important that we hear the community's voice. As with everything, it would be advisory to council. I think that's really important to say as well. It wouldn't be a decision-making body, but it would be somewhere where we could get a lot of input from the public, a lot of technical information back that maybe we don't have the time and the knowledge to deal with at this table on a regular basis, and then have a group providing some really good advice to council on how to move forward.
Is there any further discussion, Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. So it says on page 2 of the Ainley report in Appendix A that there's $315,000 for municipal staff. Now, is that going forward, or is that some of the past, or is that just, what is that, Matt?
So that was just their estimated allowance for the 14 or 15 months that this proposal was based on. It wasn't specified, and as I say, it was just very much an estimate. We would need to dig down further with that to sort of really understand what we're talking about. For instance, right now, maybe a little bit more of my time and a few of my colleagues' time is being spent that once we have a project administrator, that won't need to be quite as high, perhaps, and so on. So I think, you know, very much all of that stuff in the appendix to their proposal is guesstimates at best, but we just wanted to give council some idea of the general costs of some of the types of work that we believe need to be done.
Okay, it was asked about municipal staff, so that it's in there.
Yep.
Now, having said that, money has been spent to this date. Well, we've hired 2 firms, staff time. Has the purse strings opened up? Is there any money flowing towards this, or are we just hoping it might? And where I'm going with this is there's going to be a decision made by the Ministry of Energy next month. This could be all for naught. Are we out the money that we put out?
So no. Invoices that we've received from the companies that we've had working for us, including our legal team and so on, have been paid. The way that's working right now is that we as a municipality are paying them, and then we bill back TCE for those costs. Part of the change that I would like to see happen as we go through this process, because particularly as we will be spending more, is that the TCE provide us with an allowance up front, so we're not carrying those costs, and then we pay from that allowance, and obviously we would provide very detailed accounts of what we've paid and so on. That's my hope anyway. We haven't done that. Right now, we haven't received any money for any of the work that has happened internally for related to this project.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. In the Ainley report, number 3 recommended immediate undertakings. The first one is strengthening relationships with SON, and I do think that's very critically important. But I also personally feel that moving on to page 5, where we speak to the community visioning process, that really should come first, because to me, a vision is the foundation. Mr. Smith spoke to it. That's where we come together and understand as a community what we all want, where we're all going with this, so that it gets us all on the same page, so to speak. And I really think it's important that be given a very high priority, if not being first on the list, because without that understanding, that collective understanding of where we're heading within our community, then, you know, we could be off in many different directions. So I really feel that the visioning process is critical and should be undertaken as immediately as possible.
Did you wish to respond? Sure. Okay. Councillor Yeri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm glad you brought that up, Deputy Mayor, because yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go as well. And I'm waffling because initially, and you know where I'm going, because initially my concept was we were talking about hiring an economic development person. To me, it still feels a bit of a chink in our armor that we kind of parse out economic development to kind of a lot of our senior management as opposed to have somebody on point. Now, having said that, I do appreciate that the project management position is vital, and I think it is. I think you've made an excellent case as to why that person should be that. It actually gives me a little bit of hope as well that Mr. Sandberg is also a past counselor, so I think he also has through the lens of the importance of economic development. But it does concern me, and the Deputy Mayor's point that you're right, a map is literally our guide through, and economic development has to be. How can we even talk about getting into a community benefit plan without an economic development lens? So that's why it scares me a little bit that an engineer comes in who's totally, and I totally appreciate, and yes, the mitigation factor has got to be paramount in this, but by the same token, so is the long-term economic development strategy about what is going to happen in this community 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And the engineer is going to go, yeah, let's make sure the roads are good now and nobody's be affected now. But 30 years down the road is another story economic development wise. So I'm agreeing with the Deputy Mayor, but I want to know your rebuttal to why the economic development part of it.
Absolutely. So I think whenever we talk about some of this sort of stuff, we can, and I do this all the time, get ourselves a little bit tangled in what we think people are. And so, I think we as a municipality very much see Ainley as an engineering company because that is what they do 90% of the time. And certainly the people who are involved in this are engineers. But I think very much that's why I'm talking about this as a project manager. It's not to be an engineer on this element of it. There's engineering on the technical review, which is incredibly important. But in this case, it's to guide us through a process. So, if we were talking about community visioning, for instance, it's not the Ainley staff who would be leading that. And that's why I think some of these costs are pretty high, because we would need to bring in somebody who is an expert in doing this. I know the Economic Development Advisory Committee about a year ago talked about a desire to do some visioning, and the County of Grey have a company which I believe is called Think Compass. I know the name of the person, not the company. They have them on the contract to do some work on things like economic development visioning with lower tier municipalities. And I know the committee and the government members of council have been very keen on moving that forward. I think when we talk about visioning here, we're talking about a much grander scale than just economic development visioning, but I think it's a vital part of that. So if we are to move this forward, one of my first steps is to try and look at what does a visioning process look like? Is it using Think Compass and their existing resources to do part of it? Is that a company that could do more of it, but then we'd have to pay for more than what the County of Grey have agreed to already? Or is it that they do a bit and another company does elements of it as well? I think the economic development stuff is incredibly important here. We have to be aware of that. As I've said a couple of times, this community will change because of this project if it goes ahead. One of the things that I think is very important as part of that is us understanding what that might look like. From my conversations with the representatives from TCE over the last couple of months, I don't think they really know yet what that looks like, because they haven't yet hired the companies that will be the people doing a lot of the procurement for them. They're the energy people, they're the strategy people. They're not necessarily the people who are going to say, I'm going to need 14 engineers and 13 construction companies and 2 office staff and so on. So I think we're going to get a lot more information on that over the next little while, and then we'll be able to bring some of that forward, because I think it's really important as we go through any sort of visioning process that we know the right things. My personal suspicion is that the companies coming to work on this project aren't likely to be doing any manufacturing here, but probably need a base for some administrative and financial and staff and home base for workers, but not necessarily sort of manufacturing the turbines here, because they're pretty specialist and so on. So I think we need to understand a bit more about that. And I think the visioning comes in with that, as does things like the community profile that I mainly believe should happen just a bit before a visioning process, so that we know what we are now. I will say on all of these things in section 3 of that proposal, although they're listed as 3.1 to 3.8, I don't think there's a hierarchy implicit in that listing. Most of those things will have to happen at basically the same time in order for us to keep this moving forward. So I think that's part of the detailed project plan that we'll work for if council is engaged with this as an overall plan.
Are we ready to vote on this? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously, I believe. Thank you. I'm going to continue with another couple of items here and then perhaps take a break. So next up is community services, and item C is our customer service standards policy. The recommendation that Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford enact a bylaw to adopt the customer service standards policy. Somebody moved to put that on the floor. It's moved by Councillor Forder, seconded by Councillor Bartley. Discussion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say how pleased I am to see this report before council. I think this is absolutely excellent, and I think it's just a win-win for all of us because we know around this table how often we get calls from residents who feel that they either haven't gotten a timely response or they didn't like the response they've gotten from staff. So I think this policy will alleviate a good portion of that. I did have two questions though. First of all, I didn't see within this document the word accessibility mentioned, and I assume that's kind of understood to be a part of how this will change customer and staff relations.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. We already have our accessibility policy, which includes quite a significant amount about accessible customer service in the municipality, because that is one of the pillars of the regulation for the AODA legislation. It is something that is key to all of what we do. And, you know, I think that in some respects, it's a good thing that we don't have to highlight it every time because it's just what we do. And I think for customer service, that's really important. But because there is that other policy that talks about it, we didn't want to then regurgitate that in here because then, of course, you run the risk of there being some contradictory information as things get updated.
Thank you.
Councillor Uhrig.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Yeah, I like economic development, customer service. I think you should just be living and breathing that, all of us, from staff to council, doesn't matter. The one thing in there, I just wondered, I didn't see any quantification on when we talked about the number of emails to info@meaford.ca, number of requests to the contact us, or the number of formal complaints. I'm just curious, kind of, do we have like broad numbers? Is that 6? Is that 600? And not to validate the actual position, because I think the position is good, but it would be very curious. I think it would be valuable information for us to know exactly how many of these requests that we are getting on a regular basis.
So metrics is something that we're challenged by, and it's something that we're really trying to figure out how best to do that, particularly in terms of, you know, when the same request comes in multiple times and all that sort of stuff. I can say that we have had 5 formal complaints this year and around about the same number last year. I think that is actually too low. It's funny. Nobody ever says this. I encourage people to submit those if they have a problem, because then at least it does help us to track those problems. What happens if we have a formal complaint, and one landed on my desk this morning, is that we send an acknowledgement with the formal complaints policy, and we have a 20-day standard to investigate that and respond, and the CAO is responsible for doing those investigations. So, you know, if we are receiving those, then we have a much better chance of knowing where the problems in the organization are, because one of the challenges with any customer service standard of any sort is that if I don't know it's not being met, we can't make sure it's being met, if you know what I mean. In terms of the day-to-day figures, I don't have any immediately to hand. We do keep sort of a running total of people through the door at the 21 Trowbridge Street office, but we haven't got any phone numbers or anything like that. the contact us information through our management system is good, but it's a bit hit and miss because not everything gets in there if it's being dealt with in the moment. So if you were to walk in the door and say, I'd like to pay my tax bill, that doesn't get into the system because you've just paid your tax bill and you've gone away again, or if we've given you the answer to the question. And we also use it for some internal things. So not great metrics, but something we want to work on as part of this. Our staff are busy doing this, and I think we could always do more and have more people. But I think my feeling is that implementing these sorts of standards and the associated training documents that we've put together internally will really help us focus in on this and help us get a much better handle on whether we're doing it right or not and what the volume is like.
Go ahead.
Just to follow up on that, thank you. Yes, and I think the communication is key because I've actually pointed a number of people to the contact us because when they say I've got an issue, I direct them to that. And I will say I'm pleased to hear that most of them have actually met favorably because they do get a quick response and they say they will get them in touch with the right department that ever needs to be dealt with that. So, but without fail, the number of people I've talked to, they don't know about it. So at the end of the day, and I know that's always been an issue, is communication is always trying to get that out there, but that has to be paramount because I think it is a valuable tool that we do utilize, have available for people to at least get to the people they need to talk to.
So this gives me a really good opportunity to plug the electronic newsletter that everybody should go on to the Meaford website and sign up for, because there is a link to the contact us page in every one of those. And of course, it is the link at the top right hand corner of the municipal website. We are also just putting together our print newsletter, which will go out during the course of November, and that will have a big advert for the contact us page on it. So doing everything we can to get the message out on that. But thank you, Councillor Urick. That's exactly what I would love all of you to do, which is point people in that direction so they get to know it.
Councillor Bell.
Well, thanks, Mr. Mayor. My fellow councillors, you'll remember probably 10 months ago, I spoke on a subject about the agreement that was being worked on for the Inter Township Fire Department. And I said back at the time that I think I failed my council because that report said as soon as possible. And I think that the time that elapsed was about 10 months. The clerk did say in that meeting, there was a lot of dynamics involved. And anyway, it came together as soon as possible. On page 3 of 5 of this report, along with the engagement with people, it says, responding and acknowledging receipt of a customer contact within a reasonable time frame. I would like to have a definite time frame. And I've thought about this, and I'd like it to say within 5 business days. We have had many times our staff have told us about their overload, how busy they are engaged. And yet when it says to get back to people within a reasonable time frame, what one person's reasonability is may not align at all with the workload of our staff. And I would like it to say 5 business days. So I throw that out for conversation, and I would truly like to know what my fellow councillors think about putting a measurable and attainable time.
Matt, you'd like to respond?
I will leap in on that one just before the conversation goes further by just saying that in the report itself, though, where it says reasonable time frame, those were the principles that we used when we tried to put together the actual strategy. So just trying to make sure, you know, that we were doing the same things. And when we say reasonable time frame, we then took that to figure out what was a reasonable time frame. So if you go down a bit further in the report into the appendices, you'll actually see the draft policy, and it does set out specific timeline standards for in-person service, telephone, written, so letter and fax correspondence, and then electronic correspondence. And they're all subtly different, but I think they all very much meet what Councillor Bell is talking about. I'll talk about electronic correspondence first, because, or perhaps principally, because that's the one that 90-ish% of our things are these days. And there are 3 different standards in there, I believe. The first is that for our general customer service account, so that's what we call our info@meaford.ca, that's dealt with by our team down at 21 Trowbridge. people will receive a response within 1 business day, because that's like as if you've walked in the front door. That will be either a resolution or an acknowledgement. For other staff members, according to this policy, our expectation is that the initial response to the email inquiry is within 2 business days. Now, when we say initial response, I think that's really important. That really is, so in some cases, that's easy. Tony, you send me an email, you ask me a question, I know the answer to that question. My response within 2 working days is, here's your answer. In other times, it's not that simple, because we need to do some research, or we have to go off and figure a few more things out, or physically do something. So that 2 business days then is designed to be an acknowledgement. It's to say, thank you for your email, Tony. We have it now. We will respond with a true answer by this date. And that date might vary, because if it's an MFIPA, as the report says, it might be 30 days because that's the legislative process. If it's a planning application, it's one thing. But if it's general response, our then principle is, and I'm not actually sure if it says the words here anywhere, I'm scanning very quickly, is that generally we would expect a resolution to your initial query within 5 working days. So it's you'll be acknowledged quickly, because people expect something pretty quickly, and as soon as reasonable isn't very clear. And then we'll give you the full response as quickly as we can after that. If something's going to take more than 5 working days, that to me kind of takes it out of the customer service realm into the, we're just doing a piece of work for somebody. It's like my ditch might not be dug out for the next 3 months, because it's going to go on the list. And so some of those timelines then get dealt. But a lot of this is about how we communicate that to our residents when something first comes through the door.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Mr. Smith, for clarity, and again, I really think this document is excellent. But just because it is a formal document, I'm going to ask in terms of response times between staff and council. Should we have something specific included in here for that? Or do we feel that the response times as included in the document also equally apply to members of council as they do to residents?
You asked me that question the other day, and I forgot to pull up the policy that I was going to look at as I answered it. I think that's up to council to a certain extent. We have some standards built into the council staff relations policy, which is the document I'm just trying to pull up as we talk. And that talks about very much about how staff will respond to council and how council will treat staff and so on. Let me just see if I can scroll down quickly.
While you're looking for it, can I just inject that every business, every corporation has 2 customers, the inside customer and the outside customer, and they should be equal.
Yeah, and so the staff council relation, or the council staff relations policy, which council adopted a couple of years ago now, says in it, staff responses to requests from council members for readily available public information shall be provided within 1 business day wherever possible. So very much staff responses to a member on municipal or corporate issues will be provided to all members for consistency. And so it talks a lot about the fact that, yes, council are a little bit different in this sense. So my personal opinion would be that I prefer to keep that out of this one, because I think there are some subtle differences there. But if council wants to add a line to this one, we totally can do to be more specific about it. The other thing to the mayor's point on, the internal versus external, a lot of the work that we will be doing with our staff in terms of training is about exactly that, in terms of some of the internal stuff. If I need something of Rob, will Rob give it to me within a reasonable timeline, and so on. But also the other element to that is that a key part of this is about when that time starts. If something comes into Tory and it doesn't get to me for a day and a half, but it's me who needs to respond, I don't have 2 days from then, because the customer started it when it first arrived with Tory. And I think that's a really key thing to say to this. This isn't bounce around for 2 days. This is, we will expect the municipality to respond from the right person within 2 days. And so we internally have to get better at that, about making sure that stuff gets to the right people at an appropriate time frame.
I would like, if I could, to go on the public record to say that this report was not asked for by council. This report is a senior staff initiative that speaks, in my mind, volumes about a shift in attitudes that reflect the importance of customer service. And I regard this initiative as an indication of two things. First, I've noticed that what used to be called management team is more frequently being termed leadership team. And that's subtle, but to me, it's also profound. And I especially approve the reference to a top-down focus on upholding standards. In my experience, leadership operates a lot like water. It really doesn't run uphill. And when it's poured out from above and nourishes the ground, it brings seeds to life. So, and the second thing is, I believe this staff initiative is focused on what is really the most important thing to everyone around this horseshoe. It has the potential to make this an unbroken circle. And that really is the only way that our business can be conducted, truly conducted successfully. So I just want to sincerely thank our leadership team for this report. Nothing on paper like this will change things overnight, but striving together, things could change dramatically. And that would please us all very much. Thank you. Okay. Are you ready to vote on this? Or do you want to make a snide comment? All in favor? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'm going to suggest that we actually, I know can we recess in committee of the whole? I think it's time that we just, we've been at it a while. I'd like to speak to some of the people in the gallery, and let's take a 10-minute break. I'm going to call us back to order and thank you very much. We 3:40 now. We'll soon be out of committee of the whole, but we have one more item to deal with here or two. The next one is Integrity Commissioner reappointment. The recommendation is that Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford, 1, approve a single source award to Principals Integrity for the provision of Integrity Commissioner services, and 2, enact a bylaw to appoint Principals Integrity as the municipality's Integrity Commissioner. Can I have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Bartley, seconded by Councillor Forder. Discussion. Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. I realize it would, while I'm thinking it would save some staff time and some book work to simply roll over the principal integrity contract, and Mr. Smith can set us straight on that. I may be wrong, but I guess I'm thinking, okay, these two folks are super qualified. They represent a great many municipalities. I saw Mississauga in there, and which seems to put the municipality of Meaford out of place. But anyway, I can't help thinking, even though Principals Integrity serve a lot of municipalities in our area, including Grey County. I think back to our community well-being plan, and that the municipality of Meaford decided we'd go that way. We'd go that way on our own, and so I'm not dissatisfied with these folks, but I'm just wondering if maybe we should look at this and going out and beating the bushes, see who else might be out there. So that's my comment on that. But I do have a question for Matt, and it concerns codes of conduct. Now, we passed our code of conduct in 2016. With certain things certainly like official plans and development charges, there is a renewal period. Is there a renewal period for a code of conduct? It's not a strategic priority. I don't think we have to have one, but I'm just wondering, is that something maybe in our spare time in the future we could be looking at again?
It's a good question. Both interesting comments. There is no time period on a code of conduct. Once it's passed by bylaw, it's passed by bylaw until such time as council changes it. The folks at Principals Integrity would like us to update ours. We're one of the few municipalities that hasn't updated ours from 2016-17 to sort of the format that they recommend now. And to Councillor Urig's joking comment, one of the reasons that we haven't rushed that forward is because generally, at least to the best of my knowledge, you all behave yourself fairly well. So we haven't felt the need to make it a priority. But I think there is some value to that, and it's probably something that we will try and do probably before the next election, certainly, but before that, I suspect. I think with regards to your other comment, I think there's always value in going out to tender for things, and it's something we should do. This is a case where I'm fairly keen that we carry on as we are for a couple of different reasons. One is that we have a very good relationship internally with both Jeff and Janice, and I find them very responsive and very easy to deal with. Certainly their experience means that I can often call them about stuff that isn't strictly related to this, because they have that municipal clerk and lawyer background. I think it is valuable that they are the integrity commissioners for all of the municipalities in Grey County now. The only one that didn't used to be was the town of the Blue Mountains, and they've just chosen to move away from Suzanne Craig and move to principals integrity. So there is a value there in it being the same across the county and with the county as well, because at least it means on a staff level we're all dealing with the same people, but also our county councillors are dealing with the same people as they're dealing with at the lower tier. And then the third reason is exactly what you've just said, Councillor Greenfield. It will reduce the staff time involved in something when we've been pretty happy with the service that they've provided. And there is a relatively limited number of these folk out there who are what I would class as truly qualified for it. You all know Harold Elston, who does some planning work for us. He was an integrity commissioner for about 25 municipalities until last year when he resigned from all of them. There are a couple of others, long-standing people who are not doing it so much anymore. So my opinion is that we're best just to keep going with the folks that we have and have a good relationship with.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just wanted to add to Mr. Smith's comments. I mean, they know us well, and I find Principals Integrity to be incredibly professional. I mean, I had the occasion to call them last week with regards to an upcoming planning meeting, and I had a response within the hour. They just are really on top of things, and I think we've got a relationship with them, and I just don't see any need to change that. I think, as you say, there's not too many companies doing this, and we've got a good one, so I would certainly support moving forward with their reappointment.
I just maybe add that I have had occasion to give some thought to this matter in the past, and I have definitely thought about, at least, putting it out to tender, when it came up. But to be honest, since I've been mayor and I haven't had many occasions to utilize their services, but I have been very satisfied with the level of service we received and the level of help, particularly. They seem to be very, very helpful and constructive. So, as I say, I've kind of come 180 degrees on that. And so my thought was to back staff's recommendation to single source it and go ahead. And I think there's some merit too in the fact that all of Grey County is having the same commissioner, which I think positions them to really understand the area better, perhaps, than somebody who just looked at Meaford. So those are my thoughts. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Next is recommendation that Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford enact a bylaw to adopt a significant weather event policy. Need a motion to put that on the floor. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Greenfield. Discussion. I think that everybody understood that well. Go ahead, Councillor Yurick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In there, Jessica had indicated that there were a series of sources that kind of used to study that. And the only thing I was just going to bring up was, I don't know whether you ever look at the Great Saltwood Conservation Authority watershed conditions on their website. They have that. So they have a number of points around Meaford, and they're rather proud of that, which they say all the time for its accuracy and how diverse it is. So I just wondered whether or not it was being utilized as one of the tools that we can use to kind of follow this.
It absolutely is.
Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So having this document, how does that make a reflection on the municipality from a liability point of view? When we declare a significant weather event, the report said that would mean that a road may not be being plowed. What does it mean from a liability aspect? Because we're making this statement and it does have implications.
So it helps us from a liability point of view. It doesn't save us, but it helps us. If we get to the stage where we declare a significant weather event, it's because a number of these sort of criteria have been met where there is something happening which makes it difficult to do the maintenance that we're meant to do within the time frame we're meant to do it. So if we've declared a significant weather event and it takes us 6 hours instead of 4 hours to clear a road or something along those lines, and those are the wrong numbers, don't quote me, then as long as we're in a significant weather event, we would still be classed as being inside the minimum maintenance standards. And obviously, if we're inside the minimum maintenance standards, then that very much helps our liability. These significant weather events are, one step before closing all of our roads, basically. And obviously, once you're driving on a closed road, then that's your problem, not ours. And so this is kind of that halfway house to that. So it does help when we're in those sorts of situations. I would say, and I don't know this for certain, but my guess is that it would hinder if we were seen to be declaring significant weather events for not good reasons, because we just didn't want to do the maintenance that day and it was mediocre weather kind of thing. It's got to be really genuinely worth it.
Seeing no further questions, are you ready to vote? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously as well. And the next item, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks Drinking Water Inspection Reports. The recommendation that Committee of the Whole receive the report for information purposes. Need a mover and seconder. So moved by Councillor Forder, seconded by Councillor Bartley. Discussion. I'm sure we all want to extend kudos to the Leith operator for having a 100% mark. That's pretty phenomenal. And having a 99.9999% mark for our Meaford water drinking source. Excellent. All in favor of receiving this? Oh, sorry. Okay, everybody's booked. Perfect. Thank you very much. Engineering services. The recommendation is that Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford approve the submission of the 2024-25 MTO Connecting Links program application for the Sykes Street Road resurfacing project. Mover and seconder, moved by Councillors Bartley and Bell. Discussion on this. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. So what happens if the figure of $675,890 is wrong? Because I know we've done this before where we've went to the province and let's say they give us 600,000 because that's our figure and it comes in at 900,000. We can't go back at them, can we? So how, because that's a lot of payment for $679,000.
Yes, I have tried to include let me just make sure that I'm going to say this correctly, a significant contingency with it, since we do know that prices go up annually. We are using our current costs for this type of work. There is, let me make sure, see if I can confirm. No, it's not in these numbers, but I do recall I used a 30% contingency to make sure that we are covering our costs and representing numbers that we will see next year with some leeway, as we do see costs sometimes vary. We will be doing this work in conjunction with a bunch of other resurfacing work. And so hopefully that will help us keep the costs down, because the more work we do, the cost will be lower. But I am conscious going forward that when we apply for grants, we want to make sure that we are applying, allowing for a significant contingency, recognizing that from year to year projects do change. With this work, there'll be micro resurfacing. So just essentially a layer on top of the existing asphalt. And then there'll also be HCB resurfacing, which will just be grinding that first layer of asphalt. So the base layer of asphalt will remain, and we'll just be paving that. And so because some of the work is less invasive and more minimal, that's why some of the costs are definitely lower. And then some of it will be more expensive. And so we've taken that into consideration.
Thank you. I just didn't see the 30% anywhere on that report.
Other questions? Ready to vote on that? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. So moving on now to memos, the quarterly variance report for Q3, which actually is up to Q2. Am I correct?
No, it's up to September 30th, so the
Oh,
end of
okay.
Q3.
Okay, thank you. Need a move, or do we? No, okay, just, does anyone have any questions on this, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a curiosity, there's several, but I'll just pick on a couple that are here in front of me, where year-to-date actual revenues are considerably less than the budgeted revenues. Specialized transit I'm looking at year-to-date is 4,183 and budgeted revenue is 69,300. Are there things that are not all included here with some of those that are way off, or?
Through you, Mayor Kettner, that would be the grant hasn't been allocated yet.
There may also be some reserve transfers that we tend to do towards the end of the year that will not show as revenue yet in some places. So yeah, there's a few that are like that, but certainly we can try and answer any of them individually if that's easiest.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kettner. And much sort of the same question as Deputy Mayor Keaveney. On page 320, engineering services on page 329. We're so far out on revenues versus budgeted revenues. Is something missing there?
Through your worship, I can answer this one. We do use grant funding for a portion of the asset management part of our operating right now. And so I think that's $80,000. So that won't be represented. And reserve revenues right now aren't in there. So there's more revenues in that budget than you might see in some of the other similar size departments that won't be represented yet.
Like for instance, on project management. Actual revenues today's 22,000, supposed to be 109,000.
So that one is related to the fact that this year, for the first time, we started to charge the project management cost to the capital budget. And so while it has to appear in operating, because things like salaries have to go into the operating budget from an accounting point of view, the money that is from the capital project side of it hasn't been transferred in to show that. So that budget will even out at the end of the year at about zero in terms of both revenues and expenses.
Thank you. And may I ask for a couple more?
Sure.
Recycling. Page 330 of the program. Revenues are so far from what we budgeted. Is there an issue with the recycling?
I guess in two parts. The first is that I know that some of the costs that we've been getting for our recycling have been going down. You'll remember that the cost of, things like aluminium and stuff went up quite significantly over the last couple of years, and I think it's been dropping. So the money that we get from the third party for what's collected has diminished. I suspect the rest is that we haven't yet received payment from circular materials for the agreement that we've just entered into, and so we'll be expecting the money from September 1st to the end of the year to sort of top that up to something reasonable.
Because we're missing 249,000 as budget. That's a
So
lot of money. As if we don't get that, we're going to go into reserves to pay for that.
Perhaps.
Okay, I hope we don't have to do that. And one more question, if I may, on the development services. We got a nice email today from Director Voigt, and thank you. I do remember the same email before. It explains what happened to this year's. And will we be using reserves to cover the difference this year? First part of my question. Second, do we know what our figures are going to be look like next year, or do I have to wait to the budget process for that?
Through your worship. So if there is a deficit on the building department, essentially that will be from reserves to address that. It looks like right now, and I'm not wearing my glasses, is at 43,000. Thanks. And then when it comes to our projections, you'll be seeing from us a quarterly kind of 3-quarter report coming out, hopefully by next council meeting that'll show us where we're at and some thoughts about projections for next year. But primarily when it comes down to us looking at what we expect from development, that'll be in line with the budget process. We try to keep that as up to date as we can. But again, we can't make people do their developments any faster, and we can just go by the numbers that we have. At that time, council can decide if you're comfortable with the way we're doing our projections, and we can make the adjustments accordingly.
Thank you. I look forward to looking into that further.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So page 333, it's our building report. And the last time that we had this before us, we had our chief building official with us. And at that time, I asked for maybe a little different reflection on monies that were actually for permits. I don't mind at all seeing total values, but at that time, Mr. Toby thought that there might be the ability to do a little bit of a modified report.
Through your worship, I'll assume that was a question mark at the end. So that is something that we're still working on. So again, as we're trying to develop better ways of reporting information to council with, as I said, moving towards quarterly reports for development services as a total, that's one of the things in there as well. So it's one of the, we want to make sure we get it right, as opposed to just throwing 2 or 3 different versions at you meeting after meeting. But I think there's better value, as you've noted, in understanding what the money's coming into us versus the value of what's being built.
In past, why we've kind of relied on Councillor Greenfield to parse these numbers or to offer us some bit of wisdom on how things are developing in the community. Did you wish to say anything, Councillor Greenfield?
No, I'm sitting back. I'm certainly observing the numbers and in some cases the lack of numbers, but I'm certainly hopeful. We do have a building report coming forward soon, I think, and I will comment on that.
Okay.
Yeah, at that time.
Thank you. So updates from on County Council. I'll turn it over to Deputy Mayor Keaveney for her report.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and I will ask your indulgence. I have a report from our last meeting, and I also have a letter to read, which came from your motion regarding a letter to the ministers in relation to the tract property. So with your permission, I'll go through all of that.
Thank you.
Okay, County Council met last Thursday, October the 26th. The council meeting itself consisted only of the passing of the minutes from October the 12th. So we moved through that quite quickly. Committee of the Whole followed, and it began with a delegation from Camilo Montoya Govera. He's from the consulting firm Banneken, who presented an in-depth overview of the Beaver Valley Sustainable Tourism Strategy Project. This work considered tourism opportunities within the 2 communities of Grey Highlands and the town of the Blue Mountains. And there was a grant for this through RTO 7. These 2 lower tiers were selected because they both sit within the Grey Road 13 travel corridor. The natural and man-made assets within the Beaver Valley are many and all attribute to the attraction of visitors to that area. The plan brings a long-term vision of developing the area into a world-class tourist destination. Considerable public engagement was undertaken with stakeholders to understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges of the region. It's important to note that concerns expressed by residents were equally considered as suggestions from tourism operators. 1/4 of the workforce in Grey County are in roles connected to tourism in one way or another. The strategy is based on collaboration and communication. human, and financial resources will be necessary to implement the strategy. County Council expressed considerable concern for the cost potentially associated with this project, which led to deferring a subsequent staff report until the spring. The Agricultural Specialist High Skills Major Program is being moved from Chesley to Grey Routes for a one-year pilot, as was suggested by the Grey County Agricultural Advisory Committee in 2021. The program will focus on horticulture, crop science, animal science, and livestock production. Grey Routes provides the venue, and the Blue Water District School Board funds the program. 24 students can be accommodated in the program, which will run from January 24 to June 24. County Council agreed to renew the contract with our current Integrity Commissioner, Principals Integrity, for a 5-year term. The annual retainer is $1,250 to the county, and any advisement required comes at a fee of $275 per hour. Most years, the overall cost to the county for this service is about $2,000. If there's an education day requested, that's an additional fee of, I believe, $1,750. Terms of reference were revised for the Grey County Accessibility Advisory Committee to increase the voting membership from 7 to 9 with the addition of a one sound to this group. That leaves us here in Meaford as the only lower tier with our own accessibility committee, which I fully support, as our members have been able to accomplish many great projects for Meaford. Thank you, Margaret. Tuesday, October the 24th, County Council also met to see their first viewing of the 2024 budget. This is going to be a difficult budget with an initial net levy required of $77,912,000. The 2023 levy was $67,932,700, so an increase of over $8 million or 12.12%. County councilors understand inflationary pressures such as a 63% increase in the cost of asphalt and cement, a 69% increase in fuel costs, and a 39% increase in project unit rates for pulverization and paving projects. All of this is calculated from 2020 until 2023. However, the initial sentiment very much is to understand which services and projects are absolutely necessary or required in the county so we can reduce budget expectations from there. The current projected county level increase would equate to $1,552 per household, equated to the assessment rate. So an increase of $197 from 2023. We'll be meeting again on November the 3rd to start the fulsome budget review. So that's a scary number, 12.12%. We've never seen the county that high, and we've got a lot of work to do. But just comparatively, our friends in West Grey are facing a budget increase of 30% that they'll be discussing tomorrow, and I'm sure you'll be tuning in, Councillor Bartley, to that. So, so we await with bated breath to see what our staff bring to us. So as I mentioned, and this comes back to our discussion about the tract property here in Meaford, and we know that the county made a proposal to the Board of Education to partner with Meaford to purchase that property, which was refused. And so the outcome of that was a motion from Mayor Kentner to send a letter to the Minister of Education and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So I'd like to read that letter for you. Dear Minister Lecce and Minister Calandra, I am writing to you on behalf of Grey County and the municipality of Meaford regarding a surplus property owned by the Blue Water District School Board. The county and the municipality wished to purchase the property for the purpose of working together to develop affordable and attainable housing. Unfortunately, the province's regulations around the disposition of surplus property seem to have denied us this important opportunity. The subject property is located in the urban core of the municipality of Meaford, Grey County, Ontario. The property consists of 8.54 acres of vacant land slated for future residential development. The 8.54 acres is separated into two parcels, the 5.74 acre north parcel and the 2.8 acre south parcel. The two parcels are separated by a 66-foot strip of land owned by the municipality. Approximately 1.05 acres is not usable as it is a buffer along the creek and subject to the Conservation Authority's land use regulations. The usable area is therefore 7.49 acres. The property is well used and a highly regarded asset to the Meaford community. It was hoped that by securing the property, Grey County and Meaford could undertake a joint project that would address a portion of the critical shortage of affordable and attainable housing stock the town is experiencing, while also ensuring that the public access to the trail corridor was maintained. Grey County and Meaford passed resolutions of support and submitted an expression of interest to the Blue Water District School Board in September of 2023. Our offer was based on the valuation we received from an independent licensed appraiser in August. We understand that the board considered the offer on October the 3rd and declined to move forward with it as their own appraisal from late 2022 showed a substantially higher value. In Grey County, the following resolution unanimously was passed, and I won't read that. That was the approval to send this letter. Minister Lecce and Minister Calandra, we respectively request your consideration of the above resolution and advise us as to whether anything can be done to assist Grey County and Meaford in securing the property for the current appraised value so that we can do our part to meet the province's housing targets. Sincere regards, Warden Brian Milne. This was also sent to MPP Rick Byers and Mayor Kentner and myself and the municipality of Meaford. So I just wanted to share that update with you. And if and when we get any response to that from the ministers, we will let you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Keaveney. Any other boards covered? Councillor Urick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Grey Sable Conservation Authority Board met on Wednesday, October 25th. And some of the highlights were staff presented forest management and forest service presentations, with some of the prime takeaways being that fortunately, our region is in good standing regarding having a healthy tree cover. The Forestry Service has planted over 2.6 million trees since 2005 and averaged 50 to 70,000 annually every spring. There are landowner benefits with tax credits available for tree planting through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. The GSCA is staffed to assist with information and approval processes if anyone is interested. And it's a reminder the GSCA sells trees online and holds an annual tree sale. Next, the GSCA budget passed with a 4% COLA increase. The levy increase for Meaford will be a 0.76%, which represents a final total levy of $233,000. Sounds a lot better than 12.5% or 30%. The budget will be forwarded to Meaford staff for consideration in our upcoming 2024 budget planning. The GSCA entered into 7 lease agreements for agricultural properties, of which 2 are located in Meaford. They're 55 and 30 acres. Interestingly, they ended up being about $200 an acre. So the board was quite surprised to see that number. It's amazing what land is these days. Finally, GSCA staff presented an operational review summary advising that the most common non-compliance issues are trespassing and illegal activity associated with ATVs, hunting, fishing, dumping, and camping. So those are just some of the issues that they're concerned about. Generally across the board that we all know how fun it is for our bylaw officers to try and negate some of this activity, but we're not alone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other reports? Oh yes, Councillor Porter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a report from the Meaford Public Library. We met on October 18th, and we didn't have a lot to report. Had the Friends of the Meaford Library had a very successful net shed year with their books and concert series. So that was wonderful. They're also going to be rebranding with a new logo likely in the new year, just to update that. We did enter a closed session with the municipal HR manager and records management coordinator in attendance to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals specifically related to the library CEO position. Also wanted to congratulate the Meaford Public Library staff for winning the Meaford Scarecrows Award for Best Indoor Display. Very cool. And I just wanted to mention a couple interesting stats with regards to September at the Meaford Public Library. The facility bookings are, again, wildly popular. 104 bookings September this year versus only 8 last year. So the facilities are just going like hotcakes here. And then also The programs and participants, this is an interesting statistic because 2022 and 2023, we had about the same number of programs, about 42 and 49 respectively. But the number of participants, we had 458 in 2022, but we had almost 800 in 2023. So the library is definitely seeing a lot more traffic. And to date, as of December 31st, 2022, the library has performed almost 82,000 checkouts. So it just shows how busy it is. Our next meeting is going to be November 8th, and it's pretty much all I have to report. And if there's anything Councillor Greenfield wants to add, please feel free. No, you're good. Thank you.
I can't follow that act, Your Worship.
That's all good news. Thank you very much. Need a motion to move out of committee of the whole at this point. Councillor Bell and Councillor Forder, all in favor? And now we're moving into notices of motion, and I believe we have a couple. Councillor Bell, did you have one?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This afternoon, I'd like to bring forward a notice of motion to have staff come back with a report on the process of installing one overhead flashing light at the intersection of William and Cook Street. Thank you.
I'm kind of grinning because that came up at our meeting this morning, Deputy Mayor and I with our acting CAO, and believe me, we've all been working on this project. So that's a solution that we had not entertained, and that's one that might be considered for sure. And Councillor Greenfield, yes.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I do have a notice of motion. I'll just not read the entire motion. It's not that long, but it has to do with our 150th birthday celebrations coming up next year. I'll just read the last clause, if I may. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford during its 2024 budget deliberations consent to funding of $25,000 to assist with the various anniversary projects. And if I may just add, and it has nothing to do with the notice of motion, but there will be a public meeting. I understand it is set for November 7th, which is a Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock at the Terrace Room. And we're inviting all who came out to the first public meeting concerning the sesquicentennial, and anyone else who couldn't attend and have some ideas, have some suggestions to come, and we'll be glad to listen and provide a bit of an update. There has been some progress made thus far, so we're looking forward to a week from Tuesday evening.
Thank you very much, Harley. That's great. There are no motions for decision. Moving on to adoption of the minutes. Be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby adopt the minutes of the council meetings held on September 18, 2023 and October 16, 2023, and the closed meeting held on October 16, 2023. Need a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Uhrig, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Is there anything from communications? Anything on the OPP letter at all? Any comment or? Okay, thank you. Anyone have anything to raise in the correspondent list? Councillor Greenfield?
Thank you, Your Worship. Number 14, and it came to us from the township of Archipelago, which sounds so Caribbean-like, but it's actually Georgian Bay, good old Georgian Bay. It concerned the future of waste management, the blue box situation, and it was It mentioned that cigarette manufacturers are not included on the blue box list, and so we have various items such as cigarette butts, which no are not usually very huge, but they unfortunately are still very numerous in our society. And also just the packaging for cigarettes are not mentioned in the blue box. So I was just wondering if our municipality would like to support our eastern neighbors in that recommendation. I would certainly move that we do offer support to them in the request.
So, Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I'd add is that, and this is, I'm believing it rather than knowing it, and because unfortunately Jessica's not with us, but the packaging of the cigarettes would be part of producer responsibility because the blue box collects cardboard and so on. And so, there is an element of this that's in there somewhere, but I think my only other thought will be it'd be very difficult to sort of how to determine how much they should pay for cigarette butts and things, which will be inevitably in trash bags. But I mean, I think it's a sensible thing to want to encourage companies like that to do better in terms of their packaging.
So, Councillor Greenfield can move a motion here. Do we have a seconder for his motion? Councillor Forder? And do you want to just state that so that we can all know what we're voting on?
I'm trying to find
So the motion would just be the council of the municipality of Meaford support the corporation of the township of the Archipelago's motion regarding cigarette producer responsibility.
Okay. Any discussion? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. And I'm glad you brought this forward, Councillor Greenfield, and I will definitely support it from the perspective of being here with my Rotary hat on and recognizing that we've operated the annual cleanup for, I'm going to guess 6 or 7 years now. And doggy bags being the number one thing that is cleaned up, but cigarette butts definitely number 2. And I think some education to the public is in order to try to get folks to not leave those on the ground. And perhaps that could be a part of what comes out of this. So yes, definitely supporting.
Okay. I think we are at the end of our scheduled meeting. We are going into a closed session shortly.
So we just need a vote on that motion, please.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Did you wish to speak?
I can just briefly go through the three items that Archipelago resolved. Number 1, take financial responsibility for the collection, transportation, recycling, or safe disposal of discarded cigarettes and related waste materials. Develop and engage in public awareness campaigns to educate the public about the environmental impact of cigarette butt litter and implement programs to educate the public on the safe disposal of cigarette butts. And number 3 is implement measures to minimize the environmental impact of their products through the use of sustainable materials, reduce packaging, and improved recycling initiatives. So I think that's what we would be supporting.
Okay, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. And now we will be moving into a closed session on a health and safety matter and also a CAO recruitment update. So
we just need a motion for that, please.
Yes, moved by Councillor Forder, seconded by Councillor Bartley. All in favor? And we will see you on the other side. Okay. Okay, everybody set?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that right along.
Okay. So resuming our council meeting, I just want to report out of our closed session that council provided our Director of Human Resources Manager on directions on a health and safety matter and also the CAO recruitment update. And we've got one more piece of business here, confirming bylaw. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-65 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Meaford at its regular and special meetings held in the month of October 2023 be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Greenfield and Deputy Mayor Keaveney, all in favor? That is passed. And with that, I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned.